all we're going to do is exercises. We're going to practice the things that we were talking about. And the way we'll do the exercises is I'll tell you which one we're starting off with, and then you'll handwrite on that sheet. When you're done, just bring it up here to the front, set it down, and once there's a few of them that have come in, then I'm going to read off some of the answers so that we can do some comparison and some contrast, so that we can see what other people did in response, and you can compare that to what you did, and we can sort of learn from each other. So the first exercise that we're going to do is the one called Breaking Bad Proposal Habits. Looks like this. So what I want you to do is to go through each of the 7 sentences there, and there's a bad habit that it explains, and then an example of a sentence that you should rewrite. Now, all of these examples of bad habits are paraphrased from real proposals. Right? People actually write like this when they get back to their office and they're not thinking about PowerPoint from the training that they took. So this gives you a chance to see the kinds of things that show up in proposals, learn to recognize them, and learn to correct them. Anybody have any questions about how to do the exercise?
Just to replay it, so the sentence is the one highlighted in the black. The
Yes.
success of this, okay. Very good.
So I'll give you at least 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes to write out your things, and then just bring them up front here when you're done so that we can do some comparisons. In the first example, the original sentence was, "The success of this project depends on having the right staff to do the work." And the problem with that is that it's what I call a universal statement. It applies equally to everybody. It's also true for your competitors. You haven't said anything that differentiates your own proposal. You just declared something that happens to be true. Lots of companies do that, and it's part of another habit, which is building to the finish. I talked yesterday about the importance to have how what you learn in school is wrong for proposals. You don't conclude at the end of a paragraph in the proposals. You want to say it at the beginning. So what people tend to do is they build to the finish. They get warmed up, you know? They sit down to write, and so the first thing that they want to write is something that sort of sets the stage. Like, quality is critical to the success of this program. And therefore, we do this, we do that. And finally, they get around to saying what the actual result is for the customer. And you need to flip that order around in proposals. But as part of that whole area, people tend to start off by making these universal statements. So instead of saying that the success of this project depends on having the right staff to do the work, we have someone who wrote, our company assigns key problem solvers to each project to effectively identify and resolve issues quickly and efficiently. So it's saying what the customer is going to get, which is very good, all right? The customer is going to get key problem solvers. They're going to get effective issue resolution quickly and efficiently. A lot of beneficial words in there. Now, if this was a real RFP that we were working against, we would want to make sure that each of those adjectives relates back to the evaluation criteria. Quickly and efficiently sounds good in isolation, but we want to use the terminology from the evaluation criteria so that we can match up the fact that the customer is getting something with how we're going to get scored. And we'll do some exercises like that today too. All right.
Do we want to use that our company does something, or do we want to just make it a statement?
there are different ways to approach it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the first one from several different people, and we'll see what approaches different people took. Right? The next one doesn't start off with our company. It starts off with our staff. Our staff of certified fill-in-the-blank professionals will ensure you meet your goal of 1,000 blanks this quarter. All right, so, and by the way, in an exercise, setting it up with all these fill-in-the-blanks is just fine, okay? Because what matters is the formulation here. It's not the details, it's an exercise. So, instead of saying that the success of the project depends on having the right staff to do the work, this one is saying that our staff will ensure that you get your goal fulfilled. And that's a good thing if you spell out what that goal is. Okay, so on this one, instead of saying the success of this project depends on having the right staff to do the work, this one says, this is a complex project. To carry it out successfully, your best option is to use our team. And on this one, what you've got is taking the universal statement that applies to everybody, the success of the project depends on having the right staff to do the work, and it's replacing it with another universal statement. This is a complex project. It's really tempting to want to set the stage for your response, all right? So you know, you can get sucked in and drawn back into that. That's why this is called, you know, an exercise in fixing bad habits.
But when you do something though, are you having to do it all by yourself, or is somebody, you know, looking over it and maybe making some decisions to make it sound better?
On a proposal?
Yeah.
It depends on how many people are in your company and what their skill sets are. So,
because I would never use myself as the main focus. I would always, you know, try to do something off of somebody.
Yesterday at lunch, somebody asked me, you know, if it makes sense to hire a proposal consultant to write your proposal for you. And you know, the answer to that is one of those things where it depends, because you can do that. I'm sure that you can find somebody who will write your proposal for you, and I'm equally sure that you don't want somebody to write your proposal for you. You might want to get help. Okay, but there's a few things that if you think about insourcing versus outsourcing, you want to own your customer relationships. Okay, you don't want to hire somebody to find your customers for you and interact with the customer for you, because then it's their customer, it's not your customer. Okay, so you want to own your customer relationships. You also want to own your win strategies, because your win strategies, it's a core competency for your business. Okay, if you can't figure out how to, you know, address what the customer needs in an innovative way, then, you know, your business is not going to be successful. So that function, you want to own that. And the nature of your offering, you probably want to own the subject matter expertise, which is really easy when we have engineers in the room, okay, like we did yesterday. And some of you may work in engineering. I can't remember everybody. But you want to, just like you want to own your win strategies, be able to provide innovative solutions, you want to have the subject matter expertise, okay, to be able to write about the customer's needs in an innovative way. You might be able to find a consultant with experience with the customer and experience in the subject matter. But even if you can, do you really want to? Or do you want to develop that capability within your company? Now, if you're new, it might make sense to find a consultant who is an expert in the customer and the subject matter, who can teach you how to develop that capability and help you develop that capability. But you don't want to hand it off and say, here, go do this proposal for me. I just want the business. I don't want to do the proposal. That's what you don't want to do. So when it comes to proposal writing, yes, you can find somebody who can help you get the words on paper, help you articulate your strategies and your subject matter expertise, kind of like a ghostwriter for a book. Okay, it's completely legitimate to have an editor if writing is not something that you're good at. Nothing wrong with that. Just make sure that you're developing the capabilities within your business that you're going to need. And then as your business grows and you're able to hire specialists to do things like proposal writing, you'll have all the other things, all the other skills and expertise that you need for proposal writing to be successful. All right, so another one. The success of this project depends on having the right staff to do the work. And this one says, I can't quite read it, so I'll just go to the next one. Through a single point of contact, your direct connection with your project manager facilitates contract customization to your specifications. So with this one, it's replacing the idea of having the right staff to do the work with having the right project manager. Okay, and then saying what the project manager will do for the customer. All right. On the next one we have, so in response to the success of this project depends on having the right staff to do the work. We have, in order to achieve your project goals, we feel it's important to staff with a 2-person camera crew and shoot at a full 8-hour day to get full efficiency, both cost and ability to capture more footage without having to revisit for several reshoots. So this one's doing a few different things at once. So it's saying why they're doing it in order to achieve your project goals, which is good. It'd be, in a real proposal situation, it would be much better to say what those goals are, but this is an exercise, and you don't really have that to work with, and that's okay. But the next part, we feel it's important to staff it with a 2-person camera crew. Don't give them what you feel is important. If it's important, do it. Okay, so we will staff it with a 2-person camera crew and shoot it a full 8-hour day to give you the maximum efficiency and lower your costs by enabling us to capture more footage without having to revisit for several reshoots. Okay. So in the original sentence, success of this project depends on having the right staff to do the work. This is explaining why, this is providing the benefits of improved efficiency and lower costs. It also, in the exercise, doesn't really say anything about right staff. Okay, it says we'll have a 2-person crew and an 8-hour day. So it's talking about the number of staff. But if the original was about the quality of the staff, hasn't really said anything about that.
So when you're doing something like that, you're having to do the who, what, where, why, and everything in that sentence.
It's more like that who, what, where, how, when, and why is a good thing to always do.
So it should be in every...
Yep.
Okay.
You just have to watch your page limitation. It's real easy with the who, what, where, how, when, and why technique to turn a sentence into a paragraph.
Yeah, that's
and you can't always do that. All right, I'm going to go on to the next one. The next one is, we are fully committed to achieve the highest levels of quality. See that in a lot of proposals. We are fully committed to fulfill your goals. We are fully committed to give you the best solution at the lowest price. We are fully committed to do this project while achieving the maximum amount of risk mitigation. All right. So that's something that I mentioned yesterday. Don't be committed. Just do it. If it's important, don't even tell them that it's important, and don't express don't say, we feel this is important. No, just do it. Because if it's important, that's what the customer wants. They want you to do it. So let's see what we got. Acme employs numerous internal systems that cultivate an environment where quality is expected and desired. Okay. It's good that they have the systems that gives it some credibility. But instead of delivering the quality on this one, it says that quality is expected and desired. There's a difference between we have a process or we have a system, and because we have this system, quality is expected and desired, and we use this system to deliver quality. Okay. So it's getting back to focusing on what the customer is going to get. And the whole purpose of getting rid of the word commitment out of this is to take the promise away, take away the expectation, and provide fulfillment instead. All right. So the original was, we are fully committed to achieving the highest levels of quality. And on this one we have, we will ensure all of your buildings meet or exceed industry regulations. There it is. You're going to get quality. And in this case, quality is defined by the industry regulations. In a real proposal situation, you might want to detail what those regulations are, okay? But in an exercise, you don't have that to work with, so that's just fine. All right. We are fully committed to achieving the highest levels of quality. And on this one we have, quality projects assure you of a successful outcome for your project. That's that universal statement creeping back in. Okay? Because that statement is true for everybody, not just you. It doesn't differentiate you.
So our quality products would have made that different?
Yes, but even at that level, it's a bit vague, all right? So what is it that makes your products higher quality than somebody else's? Where's the actual differentiator there? And how does having a quality project assure a successful outcome? Right? Just because you're using quality parts doesn't mean that what you're building or fixing or doing is going to have a successful outcome. It might be a contribution, but that hasn't really been explained, so you haven't really proven that the customer will get the quality, and it's all about what the customer gets. All right?
I have one from Macomb. It says the services provided to your organization will reflect the proven record of highest level of quality that has been achieved by the staff assigned to this project.
Okay. Do you remember something from yesterday? We're going to do a whole exercise on this. Something called the so what test. That fails the so what test. Can you read it again?
The services provided to your organization will reflect the proven record of highest level of quality that has been achieved by the staff assigned to this project.
When a vendor says, I've got a great quality record, what do you say? Yeah, so what? What is that going to do for me? What do I get out of that? When the vendor says, I have this experience, I have this qualification, I have this capability, what does the customer get from it? And that's what that sentence really needs, okay? Because that sentence is just taking a pass on saying what the customer is going to get and instead saying something about themselves. Remember the whole unit yesterday, the whole series of slides on proposals not being about you? It's not about your record. It's about the customer. So what about your record matters to the customer? And it might be implied in that sentence, but if you want to win, you have to go beyond implications, okay? Because you're not, the customer isn't trying to read between the lines and get the implications of what you're saying. Customer wants you to tell them what they're going to get. Okay, so here's one. The original was, we are fully committed to achieving the highest levels of quality, and this one says, the quality of training you seek and we deliver is achieved through a combination of your contract customization, your specifications, and OSHA requirements. So let me read this one again and think about what it actually says. Okay. The quality of training you seek and we achieve the quality of training you seek and we deliver is achieved through a combination of your contract customization, your specifications, and OSHA requirements. So what you've asked for, we deliver. That's pretty much what it says. Uses a lot of words to say that, though. Okay? So one of the bad habits in here is telling the customer about themselves. So I usually try to avoid telling the customer what they seek. I don't even like to tell the customer what they need or what they require. Instead, I skip that and go straight to fulfillment. If there's something that they need, I don't need to tell them that. I need to tell them what I'm going to do about it. Likewise, the same is true with anything that they require. So if the customer is seeking quality training, then just deliver that. Okay. And if you deliver it through contract customization, response to their specifications or OSHA requirements, then build that into the training you deliver, the quality training you deliver. So you can take that whole sentence, take it apart, take out the key words, and turn it into something that's specific that the customer gets. So you see a lot in advertising and brochures where businesses don't like to commit to things. They don't like to make promises in ads. They like implications. They want you to feel like they're going to save, but they don't want to tell you how much. They might give you some ballpark percentage, okay? But they don't want to commit to a specific amount. They don't want to give you numbers. They don't even want to commit their staff to doing very specific things. They want to promise you support, comfort. They want to promise you a wonderful experience, okay? But they don't want to say that this number of people are going to do these specific things and you're going to get this from it, and it's a commitment, and we'll sign a contract to that effect. When you look at a brochure, you're never going to see that language. When you look at advertisements, you're never going to see that. But yet, the way we write in proposals is heavily influenced by the many thousands, if not millions, of brochures and ads you've seen all of your life. And it sneaks into your writing, and this is where a lot of these bad habits come from. So, commit. Don't write like a brochure. We're talking about a proposal here. A brochure goes out to many, people anonymously, and you have no idea what their circumstances are, and you have no idea what's relevant to them. A brochure is a fishing expedition. Okay? A proposal is not. A proposal is going to one customer that you can research, you can get to know. And that proposal has one job. The job of that proposal is to get the customer to sign a contract. And that's true whether it's a government proposal, whether it's business to business, okay? So that contract is ultimately going to be very specific. So your proposal can commit to what you intend to put in that contract. You don't have to word around it. You don't have to set the stage, okay? You're trying to introduce the customer to the contract. So you want to be specific about what they're going to get as a result of signing that contract. And it, you know, in order for the customer to be persuaded that signing the contract is a good idea, the more you talk around it, the more you sound sketchy. You don't sound trustworthy when you're talking around the subject and using universal statements and talking about commitment instead of actually doing things. If the customer is going to sign the contract, they want more than a promise to do things. Okay? They want the contract. They want a commitment. Okay. Try another one. We are fully committed to achieving the highest levels of quality. In order to leave a positive impression on your 500 attendees and create a call to action for your fundraising event, we will create a show or create a show flow to ... and it goes through procedures. So it's saying why we're doing this. We're trying to leave a positive impression on your 500 attendees. And we're going to do that by creating a call to action for your event. And then it says we will do the following things. So it doesn't get back to the original idea of quality. So if you were editing a proposal and it was talking about quality and it had this commitment thing in it, you would want to replace it with something talking about quality that goes beyond goes beyond talking about commitment and actually saying what the customer will get. All right, let's try another one. Next sentence was, because you seek a large improvement in the efficiency of your systems, updating your technology will be key. So it's telling the customer about themselves. Because you want this, blah, 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 and then it ends with a universal statement. Okay. Updating your technology will be key. Well, if that's true, then what do they need you for? There are plenty of other technology vendors that could update it for them. All right. So this one says, we understand your department seeks large improvements in your system efficiencies. Our company will leverage our extensive experience to identify and implement technology updates that will achieve and exceed your desired improvements. Okay. The first sentence, we understand your department seeks large improvements in your system efficiencies. It's completely unnecessary. Delivers no value to the customer. We can just delete it. It's getting warmed up. This is how these habits sneak into your writing, okay? Because the next sentence says, our company will leverage our extensive experience to identify and implement updates that will achieve and exceed your desired improvements. So the next sentence says, because of our experience, you're going to get something. And it's something really good. So the next sentence is the one that matters to the customer. The first sentence doesn't really say anything. One of the things we talked about yesterday was, if you want to talk about understanding, the best way to talk about understanding is through results. Never claim understanding. Instead of saying, we understand your department seeks large improvements, instead you can say, just simply, we're going to deliver large improvements, but add some of these details back in. Acme will exceed your desired improvements by leveraging our extensive experience to identify and implement technology updates. From a customer's perspective, that shows more understanding than the sentence that claimed the understanding. Because it's saying, okay, well, you've got some experience, and that's what you're going to use for identifying and updating the technology updates. And it's going to, you know, exceed, you know, what we said in the RFP is implied, okay? That's all good stuff. That matters from a customer's perspective, okay? That matters more than the sentence that said, we understand your department seeks large improvements. All right, the original was, because you seek a large improvement in the efficiency of your systems, updating your technology will be key. And the response is, we will increase the efficiency of your system by 50% by updating your networking technology. That shows they understand. That shows that, you know, without telling the customer, here's what you seek, and here's, you know, what you should think, and this is me telling you about you. Instead of being formulated like that, it just says, yeah, we're going to do this, and with a nice little commitment, and it's even quantified. Okay, so on number 4, the original sentence was, we are an award-winning company with more than 20 years of experience. And this one says, having worked in all facets of your shop, the time is now to look to where we can add to where you need the help. So instead of saying the simple fact that, yeah, we've got 20 years of experience, we've won some awards, neither of which passes the so what test. So this one says, we've worked in every aspect of your organization, and we can add, you know, we can add value. Where you need the help. So getting into how your experience will benefit them is what you want to do instead of simply saying you've got it. So in an exercise, it's really hard to pull out details and say exactly how you're going to apply your experience to the customer, because you don't really have that setup. So in a real world proposal, if you added those details in, this would be a lot stronger and could actually work.
I have one from somebody that's listening in.
Okay?
Our 20 years of experience will give variability and unknowns a name. And then you had put down, how does the customer benefit from variability or from giving unknowns a name? And they replied, the author works for a prototyping company, so they make knowns unknown.
I think that was flipped. They make unknowns known. Okay, so read to me what they sent originally.
Our 20 years of experience will give variability and unknowns a name.
So it's trying to communicate that our prototyping experience will enable us to take things out of the realm of the imagination and make them tangible and real. And I think that concept needs to be worked a lot more. And I've lost track of which of the original sentences that was rewriting. But I think that could be turned into a point, but it's still a point about what you do. It's about you. And the real issue is, what's the customer get out of it? So yes, you, through your prototyping experience, can make, things that can only be imagined real. But why does that matter? What's the customer get out of that? You have to go beyond the customer's going to get a prototype and talk about what the benefits of having that prototype are to the customer. For example, how it might increase the speed, lower the cost, and lower the risk of being able to build what it is that they're thinking about. Those are the things that matter to the customers, achieving those goals. So to make it about the customer, those are the things that you need to talk about. All right, try another one of number 4. We are an award-winning company with more than 20 years of experience. Our success in producing experiences that transform through our results-driven storytelling process has been key to why we have been leaders in the video production industry for over 20 years. All right, so your success at delivering results through the a results-driven storytelling process has been key to benefiting your company. Okay, so our success at producing something you need has made us the leaders for 20 years. So starting to focus on the customer instead of yourself, this is almost like a trick question, okay? But I set it up with that award-winning line because it's about the so what test. Why does it matter to the customer that you even have awards? And the answer is it might. Your awards might matter to the customer if it proves that you have a capability that delivers a benefit to the customer. Because once you've gotten direct with the customer and said what they're going to get, the next thing in their mind is, well, why should I believe you? Can I trust you? Am I actually going to get what you've promised? Thank you for making the promise, but how do I know that you're actually going to deliver what you promised? So awards and experience and qualifications are all proof points towards making the case that the customer is actually going to get what you promise. So when you formulate the proposals, you bring that conclusion up front, you say what the customer is going to get in the very first sentence, every single paragraph. The rest of it is about substantiating that you'll be able to deliver as promised. So when you talk about your procedures and you say, we will do this, we will do that, it has a point. And the point is that the customer can believe that they're actually going to get what you said in that first sentence. Okay, we are an award-winning company with more than 20 years experience, and this one changes that too. Our company leverages over 20 years of experience to solve the problems your department faces, and our past successes have been recognized with regional and national awards. Okay, so our experience solves the problems your department faces. That's getting awful close to telling the customer about themselves. So I don't like to tell the customer that they have problems, even if the customer is upfront and saying that they do. I like to give them solutions without talking about the problem. Okay? Something else that is very different from what you're taught in school. You're taught to summarize the problem. Yes, don't do that in a proposal. Okay, don't tell the customer what their problem is, all the details, you know. Don't tell them about themselves as you go through it. Instead, tell them what the solution is in such a way that it shows that you understood what the problem was. Respond to every detail that you would include in a summary of the problem, so that all the details are there, but just don't articulate it as saying, you've got this problem. And here it is in great painful detail. And now I'm going to tell you what the solution is. So just go straight to the solution in such a way that the customer is saying, I can use that. You know what? They're thinking to themselves, you know what? I've got this issue and I like what I'm hearing because this is going to solve my problem for me. And so the customer is saying, well, I know a lot about this problem because it's mine. All right. And in fact, I know things that you would never guess to even put on that summary. But as you go down and you're describing your solution and responding to all the things that would go into a summary, the customer is thinking, okay, check, check, check. Okay, they didn't talk about this, but there's no way they could know about it. But these other things show that they have relevant capabilities and experience, so I'm pretty sure they can handle that. Okay, that's what you want the customer thinking as they read through your proposal. And the way you get them thinking like that is by talking about the solution.
I have another one from somebody that's watching online. XYZ LLC, trust in the relationships of our consumers and customers.
Okay. So how does their trust in customer and consumer relationships translate into something that a customer is going to get? Was there more to it? Did I?
Nope, that's all they put.
Am I hearing it right? Okay. So my response to that is, okay, what is the customer getting? And how do they know that they're going to get what they promise? Your trust in relationships doesn't necessarily produce anything or lead to anything. Maybe it does. And if it does, that's really what you need to say. How it does that.
Does working with a customer and putting them into the situation, like as a partner, help in any way when you write something?
It depends on what relationship the customer wants to have with their vendor. Some customers are very collaborative. They want a vendor that they can work with, talk to, discuss things, work through all the problems. Other customers know exactly what they need, and they're going to tell you. You're going to do this, and you're going to do that.
Okay.
So it's part of your pre-RFP discovery and homework is to learn what the customer's culture is like, what their attitude is like, and how they make decisions. Especially how they make decisions and what role they want the vendor to play. Because you can adapt to what the customer wants, you just need to know what that is, and you don't want to present your proposal on the assumption that the customer does things one way when they may have a completely different attitude. Okay, I'll give you a choice. You want me to read more, go through more of these, because we're spending a lot of time here, or do we want to write more and try a different exercise? Everybody's looking at me, so I guess it's my choice. Let's do another exercise.
Do you have examples of well-written ones of these?
You mean a cheat sheet?
No, just now that we've talked about it, suggestions of some well-written ones that we might be able to emulate when we write in a proposal.
For this exercise, no, because these exercises are actually out of an online training course that sets up each of the habits and provides examples of, more examples and explanation of the habits. What I would recommend is going back to the slides from yesterday and finding which of these habits match up to the slides. Won't exactly provide examples of the sentences rewritten, but it will give you more context for it. So the next one we're going to do is passing the so what test. And I think we're only going to do like the first 6. So there are 12 original statements that do not pass the so what test. We're just going to do 6 of them, the first 6. And essentially what you're doing is reading the original and saying, so what? And then providing a reason why it should matter and rewriting it so that it does pass the so what test. So this time we are trying to pass the so what test in all of our responses. And the first one was, our company was founded in 1996. So what? And the rewrite we have is, our financial stability and the longevity of our company translating into experience and expertise since 1996. And the question is, does that pass the so what test? So it's got financial stability, longevity of the company, and that's translating into experience and expertise. So if you're the customer and you say, okay, so your financial stability, so what? Does that pass the so what test? And the answer is maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. If the customer perceives financial stability to be a good thing in its vendors, then it passes. The longevity of the company, maybe, maybe not. So there are, depending on what you're buying, okay, it may matter to you that a company's been around. Then again, it may not. And then that translates into experience and expertise. And experience and expertise, and also things like qualifications, the results of them will pass the so what test, but simply having them don't. So this sentence, when it combines financial stability and the longevity of the company translating into experience and expertise, for most customers that probably does, but the bottom line is we have to evaluate these from the perspective of the customer, and customers are all different, just like we have so many different businesses in the room. So it's not so much what I think about what you've written, so much as what would a potential customer think about it. So let's look at another one. Our company was founded in 1996. So founded in 1996, we will use our positive local reputation to work with, maybe you, to ensure there are no protests during your building project. Okay. So instead of simply saying when they're founded, it's offering up something that should really matter to the customer, ensuring that there are no protests during your building project. So I think that's a good example of taking the original statement and then making it matter to the potential customer, which is really what the so what test is all about. All right. My company was founded in 1996, and the rewrite is, as Acme plans to use this project for growth, right there, So what? Who cares that you're using this for growth? Does that matter? Let's see if it says. We will utilize our 20 years experience in growth strategy. Maybe Acme is the company that the proposal is being delivered to. That would make this read completely different. So, as you plan to use this project for growth, we will utilize our 20 years experience in growth strategy to ensure that you have a smooth and stable growth transition. That works and passes the so what test, because that's positioning when the company was founded and the fact that that means they have 20 years experience as something that directly leads to the customer achieving their goals. So not only does it pass the so what test, but it aligns what the customer is going to get with achieving their goals. Okay. My company was founded in 1996. And the response is, Acme has been providing solutions since 1996. Does the fact that you've been providing solutions since 1996 pass the so what test? And I think that it needs something else in order to do that. So what about the fact that you've been providing solutions since 1996 would matter to the customer enough so that it would pass the so what test?
I have a write-in.
Okay.
Lessons learned since 1996, when our company was founded, resulted in the writing of 2016 procedures manual that was reviewed and approved in our September 2017 ISO certification.
Okay. It started off well. The first half, okay, is a really good setup. The second half, though, let's review that and see whether that really passes the so what test. I'm going to summarize it. Go ahead and read it, and and then I'll simplify it down to what it really says.
The whole thing or the second half?
Go ahead with the whole thing.
Lessons learned since 1996, when our company was founded, resulted in the writing of a 2016 procedures manual that was reviewed and approved in our September 2017 ISO certification.
Okay, so lessons learned resulted in a document that's ISO approved. That's what it all simplifies down to if I'm listening well. Does that pass the so what test?
It is if you're writing a document for them, that's the same kind of document.
That's about the only circumstance, though. So, if you're not writing a document for ISO certification as what your company does, then it would need something else to explain why the ISO certification matters, and specifically what the customer would get from the fact that you have a document that's ISO certified. It's always about the customer. It's not what you have, what you've done, but what the customer will get as a result of that. Just like experience, just like qualifications, just like when we're founded, if you have ISO certification, so what? It's not the fact that you're certified that matters, it's what the customer will get as a result of your certification. That's true for any certification, not just ISO. For those who may not have heard of ISO before, ISO 9000 X X whatever, because there's ISO 9000, there's ISO 9001, there's ISO, a whole bunch of variations that are very specific to various industries. Folks just call them ISO. It's an acronym for something French, I believe. It's a quality standard. And it's not an easy quality standard to achieve. So when you have gone through the ISO certification process, which is lengthy and expensive, and it means that you've proven some things about the implementation of your quality procedures. That can matter. But if you just say, I'm ISO certified, you're expecting the customer to read between the lines and understand all the implications of that. And you're not saying what the customer gets as a result of your certification, which is proof that you follow your quality procedures and that those procedures will deliver a quality product. Okay, do I have everybody's? Okay.
Here, not there.
I'm back. It's readable. Thank you.
Did you want me to take that?
Well, they're on here, I don't know if you'll be able to read them, but I'd like that.
Okay. All right. So my company was founded in 1996. Our company is committed to leveraging its 21 years of experience to meet the needs of the client. Don't be committed, do. So if you are going to meet the needs of the client, don't promise it. Don't show intent to do it, just do it. So I would take the commitment intro out of it. And then what you have is, we'll leverage our 21 years of experience to meet your needs. And not specific enough to really pass the so what test. Or maybe it would pass the so what test, but it would beg the question of how. How are you going to leverage that experience? And if you're trying to write from the customer's perspective, what does the customer get as a result of you leveraging that experience? In fact, leveraging is kind of like using the word have. We'll leverage our experience is almost the same thing as saying we have experience. It's trying to say that we'll apply the experience. So I don't like to get all tangled up in words and syntax when doing the exercises, because when you go back to your office, I don't want you to get tangled up in the specificity of the words and the syntax that you're using. Instead, focus on things like the so what test, making sure that what you write says what the customer is going to get. All right. Let's take a look at another one. My company was founded in 1996. The rewrite says, in order to achieve your project goals as well as provide credential qualifications. Nope, I'm sorry, I think I'm reading the wrong one. So what, down there? All right. Founded in 1996. And reputation, relationships, growth strategy. With more than 20 years of industry experience, financial stability, and longevity. So I think this is saying, we were founded in 1996 and have more than 20 years industry experience, financial stability, longevity, and reputation, relationships, growth strategy. So it's adding on a lot of the things that come about as a result of having experience. Okay? All of those things sound very beneficial, and to specific customers, you know, the presence of those terms could matter. It's saying, I have these things. It's not saying what the customer gets from those things. So I'd shift the focus from saying what I have and talk about what the customer will get. What you got?
Okay, another one. After seeing how technology was lacking in, quotes, the problem the customer is having, my company was created in 1996 to help in correcting those issues.
Okay. A couple of things there. At first I thought it was saying that, I thought it was telling the customer about themselves. After seeing that you're having a problem, but I think it's saying that after seeing that companies have problems like this, I founded this company in order to solve those problems. It's all about yourself. So it's replacing, my company was founded in 1996 with, my company was founded in 1996 for a reason. It's good to have a reason, but it would be better to say what the customer will get from that reason. You know, so to take it away from what you set out to do and turn it into what you're going to get. Always about the customer. All right, we'll move on to number 2. Our proposed project manager has 25 years of experience. And the rewrite says, we will be using our most experienced project manager on your project with over 25 years of experience to ensure a first-rate job. Does it pass the so what test? It says what the customer is going to get. A first-rate job. So if the customer finds that compelling, if that's what they're looking for, then it passes. If the customer sees that as sales language, what's a first-rate job, then it doesn't. Always in the eyes of the customer. Okay? But the setup is a good setup because it says that you know, what you'll get from the project manager, you know, and you know, as a result of their experience. All right, our proposed project manager has 25 years of experience, and the rewrite says, with 25 years of experience, our proposed project manager has successfully managed over 100 projects in your industry. Took one fact, added a new fact to it. Whenever you do that, you have to ask the so what test again. So with 25 years of experience, our proposed project manager has successfully managed over 100 projects in your industry. So what? What does the customer get out of the fact that they've managed 100 projects in your industry? And the reason why, as painful as this can be, repetitively asking the so what test and focusing so much on what the customer is going to get, take this 100 projects. Does that mean that this project manager will be more reliable? Maybe. Does it mean that they will lower risk? Maybe. Does it mean that they will deliver higher quality? Maybe. Does it mean they'll be able to keep the project on schedule? Maybe. Does it mean any of a dozen other possibilities? We're writing proposals here, especially federal proposals where they're going to be scored and not read. What it should mean depends on the evaluation criteria. What does this particular customer want? Is this particular customer concerned about quality, or are they concerned about being able to pick up the phone and get this person on the telephone so that they can talk to them? Because sometimes customers get frustrated with vendors because they can't get them on the phone. That's a very personal kind of thing. And that's why we want to research the customer to find out what their preferences are. Maybe in the past, this customer has had problems with its projects getting off schedule. So maybe they're all obsessed on schedule. What matters to this particular customer will vary. Even if you're offering the same thing to all of your customers, what matters to them as individuals could be completely different. And that's what you want your benefits to be. Yesterday we talked about how all proposal writing can take 2 forms, not just what you want to write about, but how you want to say it. The benefit side of it, the feature and benefit. The benefit should be specific to the customer. So when you just leave something hanging like the project manager successfully managed over 100 projects in the industry, what you're saying is, well, I don't really know you, but we've done all these projects, and that's a good thing, and you should just assume that the thing that matters to you will be covered by the fact that we have all this experience in all these projects. Because I'm really not trying to like commit to actually saying what you'll get from it. And that hurts your credibility. Or more importantly than hurt your credibility, what it does is it makes you less competitive. Because that's what we're really going for here. If the customer receives 2 proposals, one from a project manager with 25 years of experience who's worked on 100 projects, and another from a project manager with 25 years of experience who has seen similar problems working on 100 relevant projects and will bring solutions to many of those problems, like add a list of problem solutions that are relevant to this particular customer. Same set of qualifications, same exact set, yet one proposal appears to have a lot more value than the other. One is more relevant to the customer. One is more likely to win. Okay? So the reason why I'm focusing on drilling down to so what and what the customer is going to get is that it can make a difference in your competitiveness. Okay? With the exact same quality of offering, in fact, it could be the exact same project manager. Okay? It could be the exact same person. There are, if that project manager is a 1099 or a contingency hire who doesn't yet currently work for the company, and they didn't ask him for an exclusive, yeah, the same resume could show up in more than one proposal. So it could be the exact same person, and yet one proposal has a much better chance of winning with the exact same offering. That's why I'm so focused on some of these things.
I think you went to the number 2 question, didn't you?
Yes.
I know our people are behind.
That's fine, we can backtrack.
It says the National Park Service was established in 1916. BFM was founded in 1996.
Okay, time out. The first sentence is a universal statement that applies to everybody and adds no value and is telling the customer about themselves.
BFM was founded in 1996, 80 years later.
So what?
National Park Service, RFP, wants films that are evergreen to have a long shelf life that possesses audience appeal for indefinite time.
Okay, hold on, because that's telling the customer about themselves. It's restating the requirement instead of saying what you'll do about it. Okay?
Although we can't guarantee another 80 years, here's what we can guarantee. Compelling interpretive film that engages audience of all ages. Filmmaking process that are efficient to COR, contracting officer representative. We look at the dailies. Russell's core looks at finished results.
Now you've shifted from addressing why when the company was founded matters into what your procedures are.
Bless you.
We follow our internal rules and guidelines. CORE follows their protocols. Filmmaking at its finest, still fresh and evergreen long after we're all gone.
Okay. So the procedures individually might pass the so what test, but it didn't address why when the company was founded matters. So when you apply the so what test, all right, don't just look for anything that passes the so what test. Look at the point you're trying to make and make sure that that point passes the so what test. Because essentially what I think that response does is it moves past the issue of when the company was founded, and instead of making that pass the so what test, it says, okay, but here's some other things that really matter, and that's what I want to talk about, because it's all about me, and this is what I want to talk about. So, you know, I would recommend that on that example to focus in on the core issue there, because there was a lot of writing to that one that was just shifting attention away from the original issue. Okay, let's try number 3. The original says, my company is committed to providing the best technical and management staff. So the rewrite says, for this human resource training project, and since this is an exercise, that's okay to do because it puts it in context for us. We will bring our lead trainer that has received the highest client management ratings to make sure your human resource leads are able to train their staff to that same level. So instead of just simply saying we're committed to doing this, it says who you're going to get and what they're going to be able to deliver. So by, you know, it's saying that we'll provide a lead trainer who will be able to train people to a high level, instead of just simply saying we'll provide the best. So the rewrite definitely passes the so what test. Okay, my company is committed to providing the best technical and management staff. Rewrite says, we assign fully qualified and technical management staff to meet the needs of this project. So, you would need more detail on how you're going to meet the needs of the project, or how these fully qualified staff meet the needs. And that's hard to do in an exercise like this where everything's out of context. Because as it's written, it says, well, we assign fully qualified and technical management staff, so what, to meet the needs of this project. That might pass so what, but it would beg the question of how.
Okay, I have another one.
Okay.
The management staff assigned to this project will provide the best solutions that will result in 25% improvement in the efficiency of your technical system.
That passes the so what test. The editor and me would take out the best solutions and just go straight to the result. Okay. So, my company is committed to providing the best technical and management staff. And the rewrite says, because we are committed to providing the best technical and management staff, there's that word commitment. In your proposals, I would put that on my list of words just to never use. I also never use the word understanding, never use the word intent. Because we are committed to providing the best technical and management staff, we can ensure that our delivered product meets the highest standards. That passes the so what test. It's an exercise that's out of context. In a real proposal, I'd want to know what the highest standards really means. But in a real proposal, you'd have the evaluation criteria to guide you, and you would have more information about what their goals are, and so you could make that more specific. It's just hard to do that in exercise like this, so that's okay.
So when you build a situation like what you've done on everything here, can you put words on the outside and then use certain words in your sentences or your proposal on a regular basis, or can you have to do each one to each one? I mean,
You want to use the words that the customer used in the RFP as much as possible. You can add words on top of that if you want, but you definitely want to use the customer's words. Does that?
that
Okay.
answers it.
Yeah. And that goes back to yesterday with the compliance matrix. You want them to be able to find what they said in the RFP in your proposal. So if you used your own words instead of the words in the RFP, they'd go keyword searching and not be able to find it.
So that being said, that's kind of what I'm getting to the point of is, can I put their words on the outside and then fill it in as I go and then make sure that they work together, or?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's a good thing to do. If you go through, we'll probably after this exercise, assuming I'm on schedule, we'll break for lunch, and then after lunch, we'll do an exercise where we'll take words from the RFP and put it into the sentences that we write. And it's kind of interesting. I hope this isn't a spoiler, but you can write to the same exact requirement, same offering, like with the project manager example, but with 3 different sets of RFP language, you have to rewrite the whole thing. It's a completely different sentence. And we'll play with that this afternoon, and because that's one of those things that you have to play with in order to fully understand it. Okay. Oop, nope. So my company is committed to providing the best technical and management staff. Our technical and management staff will provide review points throughout the project to allow you to be a party to the outcome. We'll provide review points that allow you to become party to the outcome. So that passes the so what test. And it's a better thing to say than just, we'll provide the best staff. That's for sure language. Okay, I think I got them all. Going on to number 4. My company understands your needs and your environment. The rewrite says, we will deliver training that is immediately applicable to your K through 8 teachers. That is immediately applicable. Yeah, that passes the so what test. It's also much better than saying, yeah, we understand you. It's proving you understand, which is why the best way to show understanding is through results, because you don't want to claim understanding, you want to prove that you understand.
So is the amount said there, is that enough, or do we fill in more to the situation? I mean, could that be added onto, or to make it not babble, to keep going, or what should you do?
For the exercise, it's enough. For a real proposal, it depends. It depends on your page limitation, it depends on what the requirement was and what the evaluation criteria are. Okay. So the standard for it being in a proposal is, will it score well? The standard for the exercise is, does it pass the so what test?
Gotcha.
All right, so the original says, my company understands your needs and environment. And the rewrite says, I'm not sure whether this is the client or not. ABC Co's goal of production improvement can be produced through our company's 3-step production improvement process. So I think ABC is the customer. So the customer name's goal of production improvement can be produced through our company's 3-step production improvement process. Now this passes the so what test, but it's passive voice. And passive voice is one of the very few grammar things that I pay attention to. Okay. I love proposal writing. Okay. I love writing. I am not an editor. Okay. All those rules of grammar, I've forgotten far more of them than I ever learned. But passive voice is important. Passive voice is when you say that something will happen without saying who's going to do it. So it's the sort of thing that pretend lawyers love to write. Real lawyers tend not to unless they're intentionally trying to avoid commitment. Passive voice avoids commitment. So when you see something that says something like the goal can be produced, but it doesn't say we're going to deliver that goal or how it's going to be done, but specifically who is going to do it. All right, that's why it's passive voice. It's also, passive voice usually comes about in proposals when people are being commitment shy. Might be sneaking into this exercise because it's out of context. So you don't really know who, all of the details in order to cite them. But it's okay that it's seeped in because it gave me an opportunity to mention the problems of passive voice.
We have another one online.
Okay.
This welding fixture will be built to your strict specifications and be capable of exceeding the rigorous of the stamping of the number of stamping parts required after our preliminary run.
Okay. It passes the so what test, but is it relevant to the customer's needs and environment? It goes to specifications, all right, but those are different things. Does it go to goals as well? So this takes us all the way back to the first few minutes of yesterday. We each do different kinds of proposals. Some of the proposals that we do are for services with RFPs that sometimes use vague and broad terminology to describe things that need to be done and ask you to propose approaches. I'm going to guess that was sent in from somebody who's responding to RFPs that have specifications and detailed specifications. So, the customer's primary concern is, will the welding be done according to each of these specifications? That's a different kind of proposal. The customer's not necessarily looking for you to express a whole lot of understanding about their needs and environment in that proposal. They're looking to see, do you do this? Do you follow the specs? And do you have the qualifications? And what's your price? In all likelihood, I'm reading between some lines here, but the real point is that not all proposals are the same. So the standard here is your particular customer, not what I say. Okay. So the original was, my company understands your needs and environment, and the rewrite says, my company with staff experienced in your industry, our company has a working knowledge of your needs and environment. Okay, for the so what test, because I like the intro, okay, of applying the experience from the industry and the company, okay, to a working knowledge of needs in your environment. But for the so what test, it's a, you know, if I simplify it, it would say that we have staff that are experienced in your industry, have a working knowledge of your environment. So what? What does the customer get? So if you struggle at all with the so what test, the way to ensure that you pass every time is to make sure that you say what the customer is going to get. Every single sentence. If you're writing about your qualifications, what does the customer get out of them? If you're writing about your procedures, what does the customer get out of them? If you are talking about your experience, what does the customer get? A really good skill to develop is to learn how to pretend to be your customer, to learn how to read proposals. Writing proposals is easy. It's a straightforward mechanical thing. Reading them like the customer is hard. Once you learn how to read your proposal like your customer, you'll know exactly what to write. Writing becomes easy. And it has to be your customer. Because your customer might like things in a certain style. Your customer might be highly academic. Your customer might be business focused. Your customer might be an engineer. Your customer might be concerned about welding specifications. So you have to write for your reader. So learning how to read a proposal like your customer helps a lot. And if your customer is a government proposal evaluator, well, they might not really be reading at all. They might be scoring. So how do they do their scoring determines how they read your proposal. For you to be able to pretend to be your customer, you have to understand their scoring system and how they apply it. That's what's hard. Okay. Number 5, quality is my company's highest priority. Listen to that for a second. Okay? Quality is my company's highest priority.
It's all about you.
That is a sentence that could have the word commitment in it. My company is committed to making quality the highest priority. Just take that word commitment out. Well, that might not be enough. You can still be implying intent. You can still be making a universal statement, okay, even if it doesn't have that bad word, commitment. All right, so quality is my company's highest priority. And the rewrite says, our roads will exceed your lifespan requirement of 20 years with our 30-year warranty. Exceed your requirement. Okay, that passes the so what. The 30-year warranty, that passes the so what. So, and it's talking about quality without using the word quality. Because it's really easy, it's kind of like the word understanding. You want to say, we understand you, but the best way to write about understanding is not to use the word. Quality can be like that. The best way to talk about quality is to talk about defects, prevention, improvement, fulfillment of specifications, achieving all of the things that are the reasons why we care about quality. So I think this sentence does that.
I have another write-in.
Okay.
Your project will be the highest priority job in our company.
So what? And I'm serious. It's the nature of the test. Does that mean that you're going to try harder, you're going to be more committed? Or does that mean that if it's behind schedule, that you'll spend more, you'll let this project get unprofitable in order to keep it on schedule? Does it mean that you'll replace staff if the customer wants you to? I mean, what does it really mean?
So if I use like top of the line products at a cheaper cost, can I put that like into an effect into a sentence and still be on track?
Okay, so we use the best products. So what? Are you doing that because of lower maintenance, better results? What does the customer get out of the fact that you use better products? Always go to what the customer gets out of it. Okay. Quality is my company's highest priority. We will provide your company with a quality clean air certificate that guarantees our air system, I think for 20 years, 25 years. Okay. Says what you will get, and it says why what you'll get matters. So I think that passes the so what test. Okay. Quality is my company's highest priority. Acme delivers quality products that meet or exceed industry standards. So it says what you'll get, and it says why. It doesn't say why that matters, but it says what you'll get, and then substantiates that that will fulfill the RFP requirements, or it implies that it will fulfill the RFP requirements by referring to industry standards. So, so that one would pass the so what test. In a real proposal situation, you'd have more detail that you would use instead of just saying industry standards, but that's okay for an exercise. All right. Quality is my company's highest priority. Credentialed and experienced staff deliver training to the most recent AHA guidelines. So it doesn't really address quality or priorities, but as a sentence, credentialed and experienced staff deliver training, so you know what you're going to get, to the most recent AHA guidelines. So as a sentence, that does pass the so what test, saying what they'll get and then substantiating it. Okay? Quality is my company's highest priority. And the rewrite says, quality is the outcome when you work with us. That may actually pass the so what test. I'd never say that in a proposal, but it might pass the so what test. It all depends on whether the customer would care about the use of quality without it being explained. Setting up, so quality is this intangible thing, and when you say, you know, we do quality work, it doesn't say what the customer's actually going to get. But the way the sentence is set up, it positions quality as the outcome. So it does say what the customer is going to get, technically, but the question then becomes, is that what the customer wants? Do they just want the word quality, or do they want the results of quality? So I'd never use that formulation in a proposal, That's brochure language. But it's an interesting response in terms of the mechanics of how we set these sentences up. Check time. Okay, we got one more. So number 6, my company is a small business. A lot of small businesses introduce themselves by saying that they're a small business. In fact, I was once reviewing a proposal for $1 billion company. Actually, it was a $6 billion company. And I'm reading the introduction to it, and it says such and such company was founded in 19 whatever it was by, and it named the company founder, and we have grown 100% per year since 19 whatever. And I'm reading this and I'm going, okay, that doesn't pass the SOA test, that doesn't pass the SOA test. But wait a minute, this is familiar kind of language. Lots of 8A companies write this way. Because for an 8A company, which is a kind of like being a small disadvantaged business, okay, within federal government contracting, there are a lot of advantages to being 8A certified, but your 8A certification expires. And if you know when the company was founded, you know when it expires. 8A companies, to get the 8A designation, the founder of the company has to be 8A certified. So the founder's name is part of becoming an 8A. And once you enter in the 8A program, a lot of 8As grow quickly. But where that matters is 8A is a form of small business. So when they get their certification, they may only have 10 employees. They may have less than that. And they want their customers to know, hey, I'm an 8A, but you know what? I've got 100 employees. So it's not like you're dealing with a 1 or 2 person company when you deal with me. Because federal government procurement customers, contracting officers, will be familiar with 8As. So 8A companies tend to introduce themselves in their proposals by saying when they were founded, who they were founded by, and how much they've grown. But this is at a multi-billion-dollar company. Why on earth were they introducing their proposal that way? Well, it turns out that this business unit within this billion-dollar company had been purchased 20 years ago after it had graduated from the 8A program. So, 25 years later, the people in this business unit who weren't even part of the original company and didn't even remember that it was an 8A or anything like that are now part of a billion-dollar company. They are still writing their introductions the same way that company did 25 years ago with the same bad habits. And the reason is, whenever they wanted to write a new proposal, they'd go look at their last proposal. Oh, what did we do in the last one? Oh, this is how we're supposed to write our introductions. Okay, so I'll make sure that I do what my company does. I'll follow the standard that's been set. 25 years later, they were still sounding like an 8A company, a little tiny company with the same bad habits. That's what you don't want. Okay, you want to make sure that you build your company around good habits, because if you build it around bad habits, they could be there for a very long time. They're hard to get rid of. Okay. So the original said, my company is a small business. And the rewrite says, as a small business, our CEO is involved in every project and will ensure our team meets all 5 of your project goals personally. It's says what the customer is going to get, says why it matters, that passes the so what test. My company is a small business. It says, we meet the small business requirement listed on page X of the RFQ and will provide you with a 20% production improvement through our patented robot automation. So we meet the small business requirement, and that matters because you asked for it in the RFQ. And then it goes on to add some additional benefit that will provide you with this 20% production improvement. So it passes the so what test.
Can I ask something?
Yes.
Is it kind of dangerous to promise such a specific result, like 25% growth? Or is that something you'd recommend?
It's not dangerous to commit to something that you are prepared to deliver. It's only dangerous if you can't deliver it. So if you are promising a production improvement, what I would really be concerned with is whether your pricing reflects that. Okay? Does what you say you are going to commit to in terms of productivity and efficiency in your technical proposal, is that reflected in your pricing proposal? Because a government customer might be able to see and compare both. You submit your pricing separate from your technical, but the pricing person can look at the technical to see if the numbers match.
I have another one that came in. We believe that in this case, small sized is the right sized.
So what? Let's see if it follows. It might.
Our core team has the flexibility to adjust to having demand, to changing demands, and has the experience and contacts to reach out to other talented individuals on a project basis to get enough of the right people for a short notice job.
Okay, that passes the so what test, and I like that instead of saying, because we're a small business, we're more flexible, which is what all the rest of it added up to, but they didn't just say we're more flexible, which is almost a cliche coming out of a small business. That's what they're expected to say. Instead, what they talked about was the ability, a better ability to get to the right staff. Whether that's true or debatable or not is not the issue of this exercise. Okay, so I like the setup and I like the detail. But take the word believe out of the beginning. Okay, believe is the same as commitment. So we believe a small business is right for this job. Not only does that portion of the sentence not pass the so what test, but the customer gets no value out of your beliefs. So if a small business is right for the job, then either say why or prove it, which is what the back half of the sentence is supposed to do. All right, so just like commitment is a bad word, belief is a bad word. Customer gets no value out of your beliefs. They only get value out of what you do about your beliefs. All right, so the original said, my company is a small business, and the rewrite says, as a small business, Acme qualifies for numerous set-aside programs, and choosing Acme helps meet the department's goals for small business participation. Okay, passes the so what test. Because for the federal government, the agencies have goals for utilizing small businesses. So by saying that you know, selecting us enables you to achieve your goals. That passes the so what test. Problem is, it probably doesn't differentiate you, because if you're featuring yourself as a small business meeting the small business goals, then that benefit would apply to every other small business who's also bidding, which is probably, this is probably going to be a set aside if those small business goals are applicable. So you can pass the so what test, but still not differentiate. You can pass the so what test and still not be talking about what the customer gets or right from the customer's perspective. So the so what test doesn't do everything for you, all right? But it does fix a lot of you know, bad proposal writing. All right. My company is a small business. And the response says, as a small business, we have the ability to offer high value with low overhead. That's a way of saying you're a small business and why it matters. So that passes the so what test. My company is a small business. And the rewrite says, we are a small business that is structured to provide hands-on logistical management for your project. So what? I like the details, and it could easily be fixed to answer so what. But as it's written, I don't think that it does. Because it doesn't say why providing hands-on logistical management matters. You're assuming that's beneficial. What about a small business that's automated the logistics management? Could they be better? So as it is, it needs to say why hands-on logistical management matters to the customer, what the customer gets out of it. Is it more ability to change, more responsiveness, faster response to problems? Why does having hands-on logistical management matter? If it's something like more responsiveness to problems, then an automated solution may not have that. Okay? An automated solution, you know, may not be able to deal with things outside the scope of its programming, and in the area of logistics, that may happen all the time. It really depends on the nature of the offering, and I'm just guessing here. Okay? But if that's true, or anything like it is true, that's really where you want, those are the points that you want to make. What you got?
I'm not sure that this is applying to this last question, but they asked, does he advise you, Carl, for current 8A to state how long they've been in business, who the owner is, etc.?
In the proposal, but probably not the text. When you go through like your certs and reps section, okay, it may be in there. I usually don't do the certs and reps section, but yes, somebody at some point in the evaluation of the process will need to check boxes that say, they say they're 8A certified and it's verified, and you know, boxes will need to be checked and proven before the government will contract with you on that basis. However, that's not your story. It's not that's not what you want the people who are scoring your proposal against the evaluation criteria to focus on. It's a mere fact. It's a checkbox, something that has to be acknowledged in order to proceed, but it doesn't impact your scoring on a set-aside bid, because everybody bidding is presumed to have that certification and just required to prove it. So it doesn't affect your selection. Now, there are facts of your company that you may need to cite when introducing your company at the beginning of the proposal. What I like to do is focus my introduction text on what the customer is going to get. It's all about the customer, it's not about me. But the customer may want to know some facts about me, since this is an introduction, and in a lot of federal proposals, you're submitting a proposal to someone that's never heard of you before. So what I do is I create a text box, essentially a small margin down the introduction page. And in that text box, I might put founded, year. I'm not taking a lot of space to explain that I've been founded. That's where I might put the names of the points of contact and their phone numbers. That's where I might put my NAICS codes, my CAGE code, details that the evaluator might need about me, but they're just reference points. They're not part of my story. My story isn't really my story, it's the customer's story. It's all about them, and that's what the introduction text is. So when there is reference data that the customer needs, you've got to give it to them. If you have to do it in the narrative section of the proposal, as opposed to in the business proposal or the pricing proposal, then if it's reference data, separate it from where you tell your story so that but make it easy to find when they need it. Just make what you're saying about scoring against the evaluation criteria. Any other questions? Okay, well, oh, sorry, you
I
got.
have one more that I
Yep.
just saw. XYZ are proven leaders in the small business market and continue to meet our customers' needs as demonstrated by the multiple winning of recompetes over the last 5 years.
Okay. Read that back and let me interrupt you a few times.
Okay. XYZ company are proven leaders in the
Stop.
small business market.
Okay. XYZ are proven leaders. So what? Unsubstantiated claim. Can I really believe you? And what do I get out of that? Okay? So delete, just don't even say that. Next.
In the small business market
Okay? Which is a way of saying we're a small business.
and continues to meet our customers' needs
Okay? That's pretty darn obvious. It's hardly worth saying.
as demonstrated by the multiple winning of recompetes over the last 5 years.
Okay, which essentially says what it's not saying is our customers like us enough to bring us back. Which might be a beneficial thing to say, but the mere fact that you've won recompetes does not pass the so what test. That's like quoting your revenue. Okay, we have X number of contracts. We have X amount of revenue. So what? What does the customer get out of that? So the fact that you've won recompetes might show something like our customers like us enough to bring us back, but what does that do for this customer? The point that's kind of being implied there, but really should be said, is that you're going to like working with us. You're going to like us so much that you're going to bring us back. But they don't want to say that in a proposal because that's even worse than telling the customer about themselves. So I might drop the whole formulation, the whole approach, and just focus on what the customer wants to get and prove that I've got strong approaches that provide the results, and simply give, show the customer that I'm their best alternative to select in this proposal without all of the backward looking talking about recompetes. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Just before I do, we're going to leave the writing exercises behind. We're going to change it up again. And anybody who's sitting in the back probably wants to move up, because I'm going to be showing some stuff that has kind of small type, and it'll be a lot easier to read if you're up closer. But before I leave the exercises completely behind, you've got a package that has all of the ones that I brought, and I brought far more than I ever intended to have time for, so that you can take them home and be a proposal geek like me and do proposal exercises in your spare time. But there's one exercise in particular that I want to draw your attention to, and that's the one that's titled, How to Respond to an RFP with the Right Words. If you only do one more exercise on your own, do that one, because that'll really help you with the mechanics of some of the things that we talked about yesterday and how to parse the RFP, and then how that impacts the proposal writing. Okay. This is going to be fun. I have to gear myself up for this presentation because this has nothing to do with writing. Okay. We're talking about return on investment now. We're talking about business growth. And we're talking about decision making. So first thing I'm going to do is skip a whole bunch of stuff, blah, 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 get to this. So how much effort should you put into winning a proposal? Right? You got a day job, you got other things going on, things competing for your time and priorities. If you're in a larger company, ultimately the hours spent on a proposal by whoever touches it add up. They add up to a cost for the business. So how much should the business spend on doing proposals? That's an important question, and we're going to learn how to answer it today. When should you hire proposal support? As in new proposal employees, proposal specialists, or consultants? When does it make financial sense to do that? Should you reuse your old proposals? Is that a good way to save money? I've said a lot of bad things about proposal reuse. We're going to look at some of the impacts of that financially. How many leads should you pursue? How many leads do you need? How many leads do you need to win? We're going to look at all of those issues, as well as things like which leads should you not bid? Or what percentage of leads should you not bid? We'll look at how to make these decisions and do it in a data-driven way. So the answer to all of those questions that I just asked is what gives you the best ROI, the best return on your investment. You should hire somebody, you should hire another proposal specialist when it's going to generate a positive return on investment. The question is, when does that happen? So a lot of the questions that come up, the real answer is, yeah, you do it when that's the best way to maximize your ROI. So then we have to figure out, how do we know when that is? And that's what we're going to talk about. So the way that you determine what gives you the best ROI is math. We're going to talk about math this afternoon. Now, if I told you that at the beginning, you wouldn't even be here probably. But this is going to be very important math. This is the math that you need to know to manage the growth of your business. Yes?
When you get the R, anyway, when you get that, mine gives a bunch of things that pertain to me. Is that going to be something that would be worth my time and effort? Like, let's say one company needed 50 things and all I supply is one thing.
Yes, I can show you how that impacts the math.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to look at mathematical formulas, okay, and they're going to tell you some very important things like how many leads you need to chase in order to hit your numbers. Okay, we're also going to use mathematical formulas to tell us how much you should invest in pursuing those leads. When a lead becomes a bad investment, how much effort you should put into each lead, and what you should focus on to increase your return on investment. But wait, there's more. We're going to create an ROI model for your business pipeline. So right now, you may just be, tracking some leads and not really thinking of it as a pipeline. But I'm going to show you how to turn that list of leads not only into a pipeline, but into an ROI model for making data-driven decisions about your business. All right, so how do you make this model of a pipeline, and what does this math look like? We're going to start with some things we need to know. We need to know what numbers you're trying to hit. Okay? What's your revenue target for next year? And from that, we're going to be able to calculate some things like how many leads you need in order to hit that amount of revenue. Then we're also going to have to add in some more leads to cover the bids that you lose, because you don't win them all. So you need more leads for that. And then you need to add in some more leads on top of that to cover the bids that you end up deciding not to pursue. You add them to your lead list, but somewhere along the line, you decide that that one's not worth going any further with. So we start with our revenue target, and we back up, and at each stage, we have to add some more leads. We're going to actually calculate how many leads you need at each one of those steps. The result of that will be your pipeline. So we will translate your leads and your revenue target into a mathematical pipeline model, which I can just zoom in on like that. You still can't read it. It's going to be a lot of small type, and I'm going to have to blow the screen up and move it around and stuff. It'll be easier once I get into Excel. So let's just take a look at it. Now I'm in Excel. Let's see just how many times I have to zoom in for you to actually be able to read what's on the screen. How's that? Can you see that?
Is this in the slide deck?
No, this part isn't. This is in Excel. So let me scroll down. So we have to make some assumptions. We have to enter our targets, things like revenue, the number of wins that we need, and then some other numbers that I'll explain. But we go from our revenue and we back that up into the number of proposals we submit, the number of proposals we have to pursue because we're going to not bid everything. And ultimately we get to the number of leads and the value. And it's a whole lot larger than the number of actual wins at the tail end. You have to pursue a much larger number of leads to get to your wins. So, I'm going to, in steps, okay, because this is math and we don't just want to overwhelm people with the details, but I'll get to the math that will show you how this model went from a goal of winning 10 proposals at $50 million, needing to chase 66 leads in order to get those 10 wins, and a total value being tracked of $331 million. So you might feel really good. Oh, wow, I found all these RFPs that are coming out next year. They add up to $331 million, but by the time you get to the actual wins, it's a much lower number. And then we're going to do some other stuff with these numbers that are just going to blow your heads off. It's going to be fun. All right, so just wanted to give you a glimpse, and I'm going to come back to it, show you all the formulas, explain how it works in steps. Let's talk about where we get the numbers. Okay, the formulas are the easy part, but there are some numbers that you need. And we have to start with our targets, and those targets might typically be revenue and number of proposals. When you don't have historical data, you have to make a lot more assumptions. So the things that you'll see in the model, some of the important numbers to us are things like win rate, the percentage of leads that we pursue that we actually bid proposals on, the percentage that we lose when we qualify our leads, and the total number of leads that we identify. So we identify some leads, we qualify them and throw some out. And from the qualified leads, we don't even pursue all of them ultimately. We start pursuing them, but not all of them are going to make it all the way to become a proposal, because we're going to change our minds. We're going to find out things we don't like about them. Then we submit our proposals, and we lose some of them. And so it steps down at each one of these phases, and it steps down by a percentage. The problem is, most companies, when they start this, don't know what those percentages are. So we make assumptions, and then what we do is, moving forward in time, we correct our assumptions by comparing them against reality. So we're going to make some assumptions regarding how many leads after we identify them we're able to successfully qualify, how many we lose. We're going to make an assumption, and in this case, we've assumed that we're going to toss out 30% of the leads we identify. Is 30% the right number? I don't know. But if we come back next year, I'll be able to tell you what we actually did instead of making it an assumption. So we can refine our assumptions over time with reality. What you will find as we look at that model, when I go back to Excel, is that the most important number on impacting your pipeline will be your win rate. But we have to look at win rate as two numbers, not one. Your win rate is both the number of bids that you submit that you win versus lose, as well as the dollars that you submit that you win versus lose. And the reason we need two numbers is to keep things from hiding from us. And I'll give you an example. Let's say you're going to submit 100 proposals this year. And let's say all of your proposals are worth $1, except for one of them. One of your proposals is worth $999. Now, if you win all of the $1 bids, but you lose the $99 one, your win rate's going to look fantastic. You'll have a 99% win rate by the number of bids. But if you look at the number of dollars, your win rate will be more like 10%. So you have to look at both in order to make sure that your pipeline is healthy, that you don't have all of your eggs in one basket. In order to build the pipeline, you'll need to know your win rate, or at least be able to guess it. And you'll also need to know how many bids you cancel in each qualification step. as well as how many qualification steps you'll have. So typically, you find the lead, you've identified it. Step one. You start looking into that lead and you qualify it, determine whether it's something you're actually interested in. Step two, lead qualification. You're interested in it, so now we're going to pursue it. We're going to start calling the customer, we're going to do some research, we're going to start making an attempt at developing the information advantage we need to win the proposal. So the pursuit, step three, and sometimes we're going to learn, oh, this isn't what I thought it was when I identified it and qualified it, so we're going to cancel that pursuit. So we're going to lose some at the third step as well. Then we go into the proposal, fourth step. We submit our proposals and we only win some of them. So at each one of those steps, we lose some, and we need to know how many we lose, or we have to guess. So creating the key formulas that give us all of this happens by working backwards from your targets, revenue, and the number of proposals that you plan to submit. Then you apply your win rate in reverse to get the number of bids you need to hit at each stage. That becomes a percentage, okay, that you can reverse in each qualification stage. And the result will be, ultimately, how many total leads you need to hit your revenue target. So we start with the target at the end, where we're trying to hit 10 wins valued at $50 million. And we'll apply a formula that says that based on our assumption about our win rate, because I'm assuming we don't know the win rate, so we're guessing. So based on the win rate, in order to get 10 wins, and in this case I can tell you that it was a 30% win rate, okay? So reversing 30%, in order to get 10 wins, we need to submit 33 proposals. 33 proposals submitted at a 30% win rate will give us the 10 wins. Same thing applied to the dollars. So in order to get to 50 million, to get to 50 million in wins at a 30% win rate, we'll need to submit $167 million. Then we look at the assumptions column, how much is going to drop off in each one of the phases, and we apply the percentage for this phase. It looks like it was 10%. So in order to submit 33 proposals, we need to be pursuing 37. Likewise, we apply that same formula to the dollars. Then we look at the qualification phase and how many drop off from as we qualify them, and I'm guessing that number was 20%. So in order to have 37 that we pursue, we need to have 46 qualified leads. We apply that same formula to the dollars. And from the assumptions page, I remembered that we said that only 30% of the leads we identify would make it to the qualification phase. So we need 30% more than 46 leads. That gets us to 66 leads, and when we apply that to the dollar, that's how we get to 66 leads needed to arrive at 10 actual wins. And we have to pursue, those 66 leads have to add up to $331 million in order to give us $50 million worth of wins. So, when we go back to the spreadsheet, make it readable. Oh, it is. Okay. You can see this, right? Okay. So we have our 30% win rate, and we have it the same on both the number of bids and the dollar value of those bids. we drop off 10%, okay, for the number of leads that become proposals. So that's this step to this step. And then the number of leads that are pursued after being qualified, we're dropping off another 10%. And then the number of leads that are identified that become qualified are 70%. I'll get to that other number, the other numbers in a few minutes. So I put the assumptions here, and now the formulas that I use in here can just reference these percentages. And I'm going to show you those formulas in just a second. The reason I set it up this way is so that as we move forward in time and we learn how many we actually drop in each one of these phases for real, because we're just guessing at this point, I can change the percentages. If you don't know your actual win rate right now, you can put in a guess, come back in 6 months, come back in a year, and put the correct number right here, and all these numbers are going to change. In fact, this is a bit of a spoiler, but I'll do it anyway. Just for fun, I can see what a 10% increase in win rate does just by changing those two numbers. Look at that. By increasing the win rate by 10%, we only need 50 leads and 248 million instead of 66 and 331 to hit the very same number at the back end. Ooh, that's going to be fun to play with in a few minutes, but I'll come back to that. So, is that readable? Because I can't blow that one up. Okay. That's the formula that is taking your win rate from here and applying it to that, to your target. So we take our target, we apply the win rate to it in reverse in order to get the 33. And then at each one of these steps, we're doing the exact same thing with the number for that phase.
Can you read that formula?
Yes. For the proposal submitted cell, it's the sum of F20, which is the target number, divided by B8, which is the win rate based on the number of bids. So I'm taking the target number and dividing it by the percentage, which makes this number go up by 33%. And then I'm using essentially the same formula with each different value for each different phase. And I do that for both the number of bids as well as the value of the bids.
Can you read me that, is that 86 or identified number?
It's 66. 66 and 331. And then just for fun, I go ahead and graph it. Now, usually a downward sloping graphic is a bad thing, but what this is really showing you is that you identify a lot of bids. Once you qualify them, you throw some out. You throw a little bit more out for the ones that you pursue. You throw out some more before you get to submit your proposal. And then you submit your proposal, and only a certain percentage of them, in this case 30% of them, actually win. So you have to chase this number of wins in order to get this number you have to target this number of leads in order to get to this number of wins. Is everybody still with me here? Okay, because we haven't even gotten to the fun math yet. So doing that, putting those numbers into a pipeline format, The first thing you're going to learn is that win rate is even more important than lead generation. A 10% change in your win rate can be mathematically the same as having 40% more leads. So you can nearly double your revenue with the same number of leads by focusing on your win rate. Let that sink in. Okay? With the leads you already have, you can nearly double your revenue by focusing on your win rate. Or you could chase twice as many leads and get the same amount. So win rate is the most important number for your return on investment. And the question is, what would you do to get 40% more leads? The average business owner might sell one of their children to get 40% more leads. So that is exactly what you should do in order to improve your win rate by 10%. Yes, sell your children, improve your win rate. I don't think that's the connection I was trying to make, but yeah. You can also use this model to play what if, okay, which is probably one of the things that makes it extremely valuable. So you can try different win rates and see what that does to the numbers. You can try different targets and see whether they're realistic, whether they're achievable. You can see what happens if you don't have enough leads to hit your target. And you can you can figure out what to do about it. Let me do some examples. I'm going to stick with our target of 10 wins at $50 million. And right now there's a 30% win rate in there. What if it's not even that good? What if our win rate's only 20%? %, down, and we went from 66 leads needed to 99 leads needed. We went from 331 million to 496 million. Okay. Now from these numbers, if I go up 10% from the 30, back up to 40, we go from 99 all the way down to 50. I have seen companies with win rates as high as 87%. And by the way, most people lie about their win rates. I better explain that before I go on to the next slide. But at an 87% win rate, to get my 10 wins, I only need to pursue 23. And in order to get $50 million in revenue, I only have to chase 114. Now, most people, individuals, consultants, and companies edit their win rates. So, as an example, should I include in my win rate as a proposal consultant all of the proposals where I advised the customer but I didn't manage the effort? Should I include in my win rate the ones that lost on price, that had nothing to do with what I did for that customer? Should I include in my win rate the things that I told them they shouldn't bid, but they did anyway? Most people, when they calculate their win rate, especially when they're doing it as individuals, they cherry pick which ones they're counting. So if you ask somebody else what their win rate is, it's probably not accurate, no matter who it is you ask, because if you want to accurately understand it, you have to accurately assess what they included in their list and what they didn't. Otherwise, you're not comparing apples and apples. But within your own company, you control those terms. And you can have an apples to apples comparison year to year based on the criteria that you set for what leads you're counting in each of these phases. So even though I've seen a company that had a legitimate 87% win rate, I can tell you that that company was so highly specialized, and what they did involved such a tight relationship with the customer that they were highly involved in the writing of RFPs, and they had very few competitors anyway. So 87% might have been low for them. But you're not that kind of company anyway. So it's not even relevant to you that there's a company out there with an 87% win rate. Most companies are closer to the 30% that I usually start with as an example. And lots of companies would sell their employees children in order to get that from 30% to 40%. Sell their employees children. So let me bounce back here. All right. So you want to use a pipeline model to experiment, to test your assumptions, measure the results. Because if I go back here, not only can I change the win rate, I can also change the qualification percentages. When I identify a lead, how many of those am I going to take a first look at and throw out? I've assumed 30%. But if I do a really good job of identifying my leads, that could be too much. Maybe I'm only going to throw out 10%. Just doing that, I went from needing to identify 66 leads down to 51. But it kind of depends on the nature of your business whether you can identify a lead like that at first glance. Yeah.
Why do you track the identified leads and as opposed to just starting it at qualified?
Because it tells you how wide a net you have to cast. Qualified leads are what you want to pursue, but in order to get that many qualified leads, how wide a net do you have to cast? So for some businesses, you might, if you throw out 50% of the things you look at, then you need to be planning for for finding 93 possibilities. It's really good to know whether you have to look for 50 possibilities or 93 possibilities. So it's how wide a net do you have to cast in order to get to the number you're actually going to qualify.
And to follow up that question, so for example, Kim sends me an email every day because PTAC does this web crawling, and I get maybe 5 or 10 a day, and I may only bid on 1 in 10 of them. So that you're talking about identifying?
Yep. Change that to 10%.
Yeah.
So, but you're talking about getting if you're getting 10 leads a day, 365, well, probably closer to 200 days, work days. So 200 days, so you're getting 2,000 leads. That calls down. In the case of 10%, with that starting point, you'd be more like 200. If that was your target, and these other percentages were accurate, then you would actually need 463. Here's where the pipeline is actually doing something for you. You got a conflict. If these numbers were your numbers, because you're only receiving 200 qualified leads, but you need 463. Or actually, you would need 46 qualified. So running these numbers gives you a chance to see whether at the very beginning, the net you're casting is bringing you in enough leads for any of this to actually be possible.
I guess my point was, it takes me 1 minute to look at one and say, no. It's not like that identification is a big time sink.
the way this is set,
Am I interpreting that correctly?
let me explain. This is set up to be very flexible. At some companies, they will not accept a lead as identified unless it's been pre-qualified. And then they go on and qualify it further. At some companies, they want to track the fact that they looked at it, saw it, and invested a minute in it. So the definitions behind these labels matter to you. You need to apply those labels consistently in order to have valid data. But you have some flexibility in how you want to define whether a lead is identified and whether it's qualified. You could even add additional columns if you wanted to have more levels of qualification and more labels for them. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of why I was asking, because if she emails you that many leads per day, but you only maybe get 10% of those, but from another source or another place you look, you qualify 75% of them, then, yeah, I guess maybe you would just set up 2 columns or something, because
Yep.
then I feel like the identification gets messy and complicated if it's not, if it's 10% from this source, 75% from this source, 100% from this source.
Yes, it's not that big a deal to add additional numbers, additional types, or additional columns. In fact, you would want to do that. Because if you have 4 different sources of leads, it would be nice to know all of these numbers by source. What's the win rate from that source? How many of them do you start with? How many of them do you end up with? And how many drop off at each stage? Those percentages are going to be different for every one of those sources. And it would be nice to know which source is bringing. One source might be bringing me only a few leads, but a very high win rate. Or the reverse of that could be possible. Either way, I want to know it. And the only way you get to know it is to track it. So test your assumptions. We start by guessing because we don't have any historical data here. But we want to confirm these guesses and change them and replace them with reality as soon as we can discover it. So we check we test our assumptions, we measure the results of what we're doing, and we see what works, and not just what we think works. Because one of the things that I've discovered from working with this model is that the impressions we have about our businesses, a lot of the rules of thumb that companies are operating under, and what they think about the market is different from what the data shows. A lot of that involves human nature and how we process things, how we learn things, and the way we make assumptions. But, so, don't hold back from doing this because you think you know the nature of your market. Do this to confirm it, and you might get surprised. But by doing this, you can continuously refine your success. Because as we're going to see, it's not just about having a win rate, it's about what do we do that impacts this win rate. Once we are tracking the data, we can track the impact of what we do on our ability to hit our targets. Not just that, we can test the ROI of the things we do. We can see if we do something like work on a proposal that has a cost, or we do something like formalize our proposal process. It's going to make things, maybe it's going to make things take longer, maybe not, but let's assume that it does. And there's going to be a cost in development and maybe a cost in training, or just training itself. Would training people in proposal development help? Well, we can actually track historically, after the fact, how it impacts the win rate and see whether it results in numbers going up more than it cost us to do that. that's how we track ROI and make data-driven decisions that can increase our ability to grow the business. Everybody still with me?
Yeah,
I know
won't
I'm
this
talking
help-
about math here.
Won't this help you decide, as far as I'm concerned, which ones not to bid?
Yes?
Not to even bother with. I
Yes.
mean, they're just not gonna produce enough, it's gonna cost me more in staff time to do the proposal than it is on the profit I'll receive from the award.
Thank you for that beautiful setup, because guess where we're going? We're going to calculate that. Okay, remember, always work from both numbers and dollars, number of pursuits as well as dollars of pursuits, so things don't hide on you. Now, that we've got the basis for the model, let's take it a step further, or a dozen steps further. Okay. How much does business development and proposals cost? Seriously, I mean, like, what percentage of your revenue are you spending on business development and proposals? It's kind of important. Somewhere in your general ledger, there might be a cost of sales. That might give you a clue. But within the model, we need some numbers. If we don't have historical numbers, we have to make guesses. So in the classroom, we're going to make guesses. Keep in mind, you can update your numbers as you know, we can update our guesses with reality once we get real numbers. Okay. And also keep in mind that within government contracting, your overhead rate is very important on your competitiveness. So we take our employees' pay rate, we add in their benefits, we add in our overhead and G&A, and then we add some fee, and that's what gets us to our price that we give to the customer. Business development and proposal is usually accounted for in that G&A and overhead space. So the more we spend on proposals as a percentage, the higher the prices we have to charge our customers. So we don't want to have bid and proposal costs that make us uncompetitive, but it's as a percentage. So if we grow the amount of revenue, then the percentage available for proposals and business development goes up without impacting our prices. And that's how we want to manage them. But it's something to keep in mind if you're thinking about the growth of your business and how competitive it is. So back to the question, how much should you invest in business development and proposals? And if you don't know, then try 1 to 2% of the anticipated award value, both for the pre-RFP portion of the pursuit as well as the proposal. So the sales process has a cost. Calling up the customer, trying to find out what their preferences are, trying to gain an information advantage before the RFP comes out and the proposal comes. If you're investing time, there's a cost associated with it. So target 1 to 2% of the anticipated award value. Likewise, same amount for the proposal. So your total investment in business development proposals, 2 to 4%. There's a lot of things that can impact that number. Okay? If you sell a commodity where the primary evaluation is price and your proposals are more like quotes than writing narrative, numbers probably come down. If you already know your customers and you don't have to do gobs of research to find out who they are and make contact with them, maybe your numbers come down. If you sell the same thing every time, maybe your numbers come down. But if you sell solutions, okay, or you have complex sales, your numbers might go up. So some things can reduce your investment, some things can lower it. Today in the classroom, we're going to use 1% for each of those numbers. In the spreadsheet, those numbers are showing up right here. 1% for pre-RFP pursuit, 1% for the proposal once the RFP comes out. By putting in those numbers, I can get to some other interesting numbers. Based on whatever number we currently have in the spreadsheet, we started off with 66 and 331, and then we started changing the assumptions. It will calculate and tell you that, yeah, in order to hit your numbers, the total budget for business development pre-RFP is $1.67 million. The total budget for proposal preparation, because these numbers are the same here, is $1.67 million. Based on the number of pursuits, I can calculate what the average value, well, actually this is the average value of an award. So 10 wins targeting $50 million. So I can see that what my total investment is in all of the leads and all of the pursuits, and I can see what my average win is. Okay? And now I can start breaking that down. Your average budget for just this column, do each one in turn. The average budget to identify a lead, the average budget to qualify a lead, the average budget to pursue a lead, and the average budget for the proposal, all based on this amount of anticipated award value applied to hitting our target. Very useful numbers, okay? Now I know how much I should be spending on the proposal. I also know how much I should be spending on qualifying the lead. All of this is predicated on your win rate. So the things that I do that impact my win rate will change these numbers. So I should be not only spending this amount to qualify a lead, but if I make that investment and increase my win rate while doing it, then I have to chase fewer leads, and and that impacts all of my budget numbers, okay, all the way through.
Wouldn't change the average because the 50 million hasn't changed.
Yes, it won't change the average value of the award because that's the last target, but the budget numbers did change. Okay, so back to the PowerPoint for a minute. So you take your investment, you divide it by the number of leads required to hit your target number, and you apply your budget, and then you divide that out by each qualification phase, so you find out how much to invest in each pursuit on average. Now let's talk about resource allocation and staffing. How many people do you need to hit your numbers? How many people can you afford? Can you afford enough people to hit your numbers? What we're going to do is we're going to convert the dollars per pursuit number. We're going to convert these dollars into hours. We have to make an assumption to do that, but we can refine our assumptions with reality. So we're going to take the average hourly rate of the people involved, business development and proposals. It's going to make an average.
Fully loaded? Fully loaded?
Just be consistent.
Fair.
So in the case, in this spreadsheet, we've done the fully loaded, and we've said that everybody in business development and proposals on average is making $50 an hour. So could be high, could be low. But by doing that, I can divide this number into these budgets, and get to the number of hours those budgets can buy. And what I find out is that in each of the qualification stages, how many hours should be invested in doing that stage. So lead qualification. This model with these numbers is telling me that, yeah, I should be spending 180 hours qualifying each one of those leads in order to hit these numbers. Not only does it tell me that, but it tells me that that's affordable. In fact, it tells me more than it's affordable. It tells me if I'm not putting at least that much effort into it, my win rate's probably going to go down. I need to be investing that much effort in that portion of the pursuit, or there's a possibility my win rate's going to go down, and that will ruin all of my numbers, as we've seen from plugging them in and seeing what happens. So, and it's nice to be able to like put that in, and because like I said, over time you're going to refine these numbers based on reality, so you'll be changing these numbers up and down, especially over the first year or two that you start implementing something like this. But having that hourly rate, getting you to the number of hours for each phase, for example, tells you that with these numbers, the average budget for a proposal is 423 hours. That's how much effort it is worth putting into your proposal in order to hit these numbers. But if you don't identify enough leads, you don't have enough pursuits, you don't submit enough proposals, it will play havoc with these numbers. They'll like go way down because you won't be able to afford as much. So the model tells you what you can afford. It also tells you what you should invest in order to get to that win rate. Yes?
I have a question of how do you calculate the hours?
Just that.
What you're doing is you're using a percentage of the anticipated award value applied against what you're bidding to get you a dollar budget per phase, per qualification phase, and then you take that number and divide it by the average hourly rate of somebody who works in business development and proposals. And so within the model over here, we have an assumption that the average business development and proposal employee is making a total of $50 an hour fully loaded. So that's benefits and all of that. So if I divide these numbers essentially by 50, I get to the number of hours. So what happens if I pay my business development people more? I invest in more professional skills, more experience. So instead of paying them $50 an hour, I'm going to go up to $75. Now, based on all the other numbers, the number of hours I can afford are lower. The real question is, by hiring more qualified and more expensive staff, what have I done to my win rate? If hiring them increases my win rate 10%, how does that impact the total number of leads that I need to pursue, the total number of proposals that I'm submitting? This is the right way to make a decision about should I buy somebody with should I hire somebody with a lot of experience or a little experience? You should make that based on how that impacts your numbers. And it also means that you need to track and correlate everything you do with your win rate. So if you implement a proposal process, if you hire somebody, everything you do, you want to track what happens to your win rate so that you can see what it does to your numbers. So every decision you make is against a goal of having some impact on your win rate, and then you track the reality of whether it does or not. What this enables you to do is, as you go through the course of the year and you start refining your numbers with reality, you can decide at every step whether to keep going the way you are or make a change. So if I get, if I'm successful in increasing my win rate, I might want to hire somebody else. I might want to hire somebody else, senior or junior. I can see how that would impact my numbers, as opposed to just winging it, which is essentially what most companies do. Well, I think we should hire somebody with a lot of experience. Well, I don't want to spend any money, so I think we should hire somebody junior. Which is the right decision? The answer is, who knows? Until you see how it impacts the numbers. Either one of those decisions could be right depending on the circumstances of that particular company. Circumstances vary. Depends whether you sell a commodity, whether you sell a complex service, whether you have a lot of customers or a few customers, whether you are submitting several proposals a week or whether you submit a proposal once every month or so. Right? All of those different circumstances will result in different numbers. If we're targeting 10 wins, if we're talking about doing 20 proposals in a year, okay, that's less than 2 proposals a month. For some of you, that's way low. For some of you, that might be a little bit on the high side. So learning how to build a model like this enables you to build the model that fits your company. Okay? This is not something like off the shelf, ready for use. This has to be tailored to your particular needs. So what I'm showing you here is a technique that you should learn how to do. You should learn how to build these. Okay? That kind of like means learn to do the math.
We had somebody ask if you were going to share the Excel spreadsheet that you did.
Yes, and the answer is no, for 2 reasons. Okay? Reason number 1, it's my secret sauce. Reason number 2, it wouldn't do you any good if I just gave it to you and you used it off the shelf. It needs to be customized. And reason number 3 is you need to understand it. And the best way to understand it is to build it. The math isn't that hard. I'm talking about percentages. Okay? The real challenge is just spreadsheet building. Knowing to separate your assumptions from your other numbers. Knowing that you want to start from your targets and calculate backwards from there. Just those few key pieces of information. And if you don't know how to calculate the percentages, you can Google that stuff. We have all the information in the entire world available to us online now. So if you don't know how to calculate something, it's easy enough to look up. Or just go down to your accounting and finance department or whoever does your bookkeeping and have them help you figure out the formulas. Knowing that you can convert your targets into budgets by having a percentage for pre-RFP and post-RFP, and then knowing that if you divide those by an average hourly rate, you can get to hours, okay? That's very useful information. That information is so useful, you could build a business off of that. And that's exactly what everybody here should do. build a business, but build a business off of data-driven decisions where you have a high probability of success because you can track your actual performance against your target and know whether you're on track at every moment. If you update your numbers monthly, you will know over the course of the year whether you are on track. If you track your time as well as your revenue numbers, you will know whether you are actually investing what you should be. And if you're not a business owner, this is still very useful information because whoever is the business owner just gave you some targets. They told you this is, how many leads I want you to win for me next year. And the question is that feasible with me and maybe an assistant? Can I really chase all those leads? And the answer is, once you do the math, you have an answer to that question. You know how many people should be needed. And you can also show the impact by changing these win rate numbers of what happens if you cheap out on it. Okay, if we try to do business development and proposals because they add to overhead, if we try to do them on the cheap, we can actually calculate the impact in order to inform the powers that be, yeah, it sounds like a good idea, but you probably don't want to do that because it's going to actually hurt your numbers instead of helping them by shortchanging those functions.
Carl,
Yes?
quick question. So the $1 million, the top H8 there, the total budget for pre-RFP pursuits, it's what percent of which number down there in the bottom? On the
E21 times E10, so if we're talking about the number of pursuits,
the proposals.
okay, so we're trying to do 10 pursuits, and we're trying to do 10% that hit this value. So 100 divided by 10 should give us 10. Oh, but then we have to convert it. So we're doing E21 times 10.
That's because you got a
100.
percentage. That's because
Yes,
it's 1%
yes,
in
right,
itself.
exactly.
That's why you had that
Yep.
extra number. Okay.
Are y'all still with me? All right. Do y'all think this is as cool as I do? Because I think this is like the most useful thing that I've talked about in 2 days, and I think I've covered some interesting stuff. All right, cool. Just after lunch. Yeah, I get it. All right. So, start off by saying decisions. Okay, the kind of things that converting your budgets into number of hours can tell you. Okay, how many hours of effort that your pursuits require, how many hours of effort per pursuit are needed to sustain your win rate, and you can play with different numbers to see how they work out. Here's the good news about ROI. If you are hitting your numbers, if you have identified the number of leads that you calculated you need, if you put in all the right assumption numbers or replace them with reality, and you are at this stage and you actually have this number of pursuits or more, and you have this and they add up to this value or more, then you can confidently, without second guessing yourself, spend these budgets and put in these numbers, that many number of hours, and involve that many people. You can confidently do it because you know the numbers work out to be profitable. Of course, profitable is a rather key question. All of these numbers are based on revenue, hitting your revenue targets. Revenue and profitability are not the same thing. However, there's a lot of variation from one company to the next regarding profitability. So I haven't built this model based on profitability because numbers would be all over the place. But you could, once you know how to build it, you could add in a column for profit margin. You could do it a couple of different ways. You could say, what's my average profit on these bids, in which case you have to track it. And another reason why I don't have profit numbers in here is that within a company, it's easy to get a revenue target. It's hard to get their profit number out of accounting. They like to keep that to themselves. They don't want other companies to know that. So it's a hard number to get. But if you're the business owner, you've got that number and you can plug it in. Then you have to really keep this spreadsheet very securely, because you do not want your competitors to know what your profit number is, because then they can derive your whole pricing. So, but if you want to know whether these numbers are supported by the profitability of the pursuit, or you want to compare the G&A and overhead impact of these numbers, you could plug those, you could add cells and plug those in. I think I already made this point, but I'm going to make it again because it's important. The important bad news about ROI. If you try to cheap out on the investment, it will lower your potential return. Investments with a positive return should be maxed out. So it's all about return on investment. If you do not make the investment required to hit your numbers, particularly your win rate number, okay, then your return will go down. So if you do not hit the numbers that you need to hit your win rate number, it might help. Let me see if I have this on this one. No. Okay. These numbers go from your target backward to the number of leads. You can also run the numbers in the other direction, and you should. And the bottom does that, but in a different way that I'll explain. Because one thing that's good to know is if I have 24 leads here, what am I going to end up with down here? Or if I have, 103 million instead of 111 here, what does that do to this number? How much is the change? So you can run the numbers the other direction as well. And that's what this is. Based on these numbers, if your win rate is 10% low, so from 50 down to 40, you're only going to get 8 wins. You're only going to have 40 million. You're going to be off your targets, okay? Because your win rate is 10% low. If your win rate's only 5% low, you're down this amount. You have 9 wins instead of 10, and you have 45 million instead of 50. And then I did it the other direction. If you improve your win rate by 5%, you go from 50 to 55, you'll deliver 11 wins at 55 million. And if you improve your win rate by 10%, you'll deliver 12 wins at 60 million. More typical numbers would look like this. So at a 30% win rate, delivering your targets of 10 and 50, if your win rate is 10% low or 5% low, or if it's up by 5% or 10%, translates into this number of bids and these values. Nice to have that feedback, especially if you're updating these numbers on a monthly or quarterly basis as you go through the year, updating with reality, and you discover what your win rate actually is. You can see what the impacts will be. And you could break this out by a lot more than just 10 and 5%. In fact, for quick reference, I created a whole tab to do that. Increasing your win rate by 1%, 2%, 3%, all the way down to 20% takes your revenue from let me see if that 15 is an assumed number. I think it is. No, it's calculated. B4 times A4. Okay, sorry. Here's, if you've submitted $50 million in proposals at a 30% win rate, then your revenue will only be 15. Okay? And if you increase that by 1 through 20%, you'll go from 15 all the way up to 25 million. And it'll have a similar impact on the, as a percentage of the increase in your revenue. So as a quick reference, you could set up a page like that where you can quickly say, well, if we increase our win rate by 3%, our revenue will go up $1.5 million, starting from these two numbers. Okay, some advanced things that you can do that I do not recommend doing in the first year. There are a lot of other things that you want to know about the composition of your business pipeline. For example, how much work do you do as a prime versus how much work do you do as a sub? And what are your win rates separately for each of those categories? And what do you budget separately for each of those categories? How about the difference between your existing business, your recompetes, versus new contracts, or current customers versus new customers? Most organizations have a pretty strong win rate on their recompetes, but when you're going after new contracts, it's a whole lot harder. There's a couple of things you want to know. You want to know about the win rate impact, but you also want to know about the mix in your pipeline. So for my long-term growth and sustainability, what percentage of business should be with new customers? It varies company to company, market to market, but I think I'm pretty safe in saying that it should not be 0. So within your pipeline, you can track that. Business to government versus business to business. If you're a company that attempts to do both, what mix are you targeting? All of these things can also be turned into targets. So you currently might do 95% of your business commercially and 5% of your business with your customer, but 5 years from now, you would like it to be 60-40. Take your 5 years, backtrack your percentages, and that tells you what your target for next year should be. Now all you have to do is compare the leads in your pipeline against that. One of the other things you can do with these numbers, with this approach, is create a tab for your number of leads, for the leads that you're chasing. And now you can go back to your assessment and add in a row here for reality. have it automatically count the number of pursuits on your lead, on your lead tab, your lead tracking tab. On your lead tracking tab, identify which phase they're in, and have it flow these numbers automatically by what you put on your lead tracking page. If you have a lead tracking page like that, then when you're ready to make it complicated, because that one that I'm showing you right now is not complicated yet. It becomes complicated when you add all this stuff to it, okay? So on my lead tracking tab, I would add a column for whether it's business to government or business to business, whether it's an existing customer or a new customer, prime versus sub, maybe DoD versus civilian. Some companies do all of their business with DoD. Strategically, they might want to also do business in the civilian sector. So over the next 5 years, what do you want that percentage to be? And based on that, what should the percentage be next year? You can have targets like, bring these numbers back to where they started. So if I have 66 leads, and I want next year to arrive at, let's say I'm 100% DoD and I want to get at least one civilian win next year. I would add in a separate row for the civilian market, but just using what I got here, I could tell you that, oh, I need to chase 7 civilian leads if it plays out the way my DoD business does in order to get to my 1 civilian lead. And if on my lead tracking tab, I have a column for DoD versus civilian, and I count them, I'll be able to see over the course of the year, if I get to, say, Q3, and I'm not hitting, 3 to 4 civilian leads, I got a problem. I mean, I get to my win that year. So tying this to a lead tracking spreadsheet where you have your other goals can enable you to track whether you're hitting all of your goals, not just your revenue targets. Has anybody here never heard the term IDIQ? Even though I probably used it a few times yesterday?
I've never heard of it?
Yeah. Indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity. It's a type of contract that you can get with the government where you win that contract and you get nothing. You get the opportunity to now do more proposals for task orders. But if you don't get on that contract vehicle by submitting the original proposal for the master contract, you are not eligible to bid against the task orders. So there are a number of fairly large IDIQ vehicles out there. And if you are doing business through them, you might want to track that here. So, and you might want to separate it too, because your win rate on task orders may be very different from your win rate on strategic RFPs. So by starting from the basic pipeline, and again, I would suggest just staying here for a year. But in your following years, as you develop more experience, managing your data like this, you can add all these other strategic targets so that strategic planning that most companies at least say they do on an annual basis turns into actual targets that get tracked all year long, so that you can strategically plan your growth for things like prime versus sub, B2G versus B2B, existing customers versus new customers. You can set targets. And as you grow into an organization where you have people who specialize in business development, you can tell them how many how many civilian leads you want them chasing to ensure that you hit your numbers, so that you strategically don't have all of your eggs in one basket with DoD anymore, that you're entering into the civilian market. Where most companies leave it is they'll have a strategic plan that says, okay, it looks like we have all of our eggs in one basket, so we want to enter this market, or we want to grow, so we want to enter a new market. We've picked this market because it looks kind of good, and so we want to go chase leads. But we worked with our finance department, and in order to, for me as the owner to hit my retirement numbers, the finance department tells me that we need this amount of total revenue, and so we've allocated some of that over to here, and they end up with targets that are just made up. But if you start from these calculations, you can get targets that are rational. You can test those targets for whether they are realistic or not, and you can look at whether those targets are achievable enough with the staff that you already have, or whether in order to come up with this amount of time, you need to hire additional people. And as you track the reality across the course of the year, you know that whether or not you can afford to make those moves. You haven't asked me nearly as many questions today.
Because we don't know them.
So Carl, you said you're not sharing the spreadsheet itself, but what about a picture of the?
Want to take it with your camera? Go right ahead.
Yeah, no, I did.
Yeah.
I'm just okay. That's okay.
So this is a very different perspective from proposal writing. Here we're talking about strategic business planning, return on investment, but it impacts the proposal function. So most folks here are either business owners or part of a small company where they're all part of the team. But if you are just a proposal person, knowing these numbers is really helpful and can help you educate your bosses regarding how much should be budgeted for the proposal function. How many people does the proposal function need? Can the company afford the number of people that you've said you want to hire? It's nice to be able to inform them of these facts and show them the math. It's a lot better to argue over these numbers and these assumptions than it is to just argue over whose opinion is the better opinion. All right. So if this win rate number is the most important number related to your ROI, what are some of the things that you can do to increase your win rate? Well, you've got things like staff development, okay. And that's training, but it's not just training. It's doing things like giving them time to do things like the second item, process development. It's also organizational development. But developing your process can enable you to correlate doing things with your win rate. So yesterday I talked about proposal content planning, proposal quality validation. And a formal process like that, it usually takes small businesses a few years to work themselves up to being ready for that. And that's where they run the risk of falling into that trap that I described, where once you start opening more than one location, now people have different ways of doing things and you can never get them all back to the same process. That's a risk that small businesses have to take. But content planning and proposal quality validation, are they worth doing? Is something that seems like it takes a lot of effort worth doing? Well, you can track the steps in your process and correlate it with your win rate. You can say that we made a change to our process on this day, and if you're tracking your win rate over time, you can see whether it had an impact. It can be hard to disaggregate the data and pull out individual things that you did, but as you do things, if you do it with an intent to track the data and how it correlates with your win rate, you may be able to see the impact. You may find out things like what does a 1% increase in your win rate do for you? Just doing something that gets you a 1% improvement in your win rate, which could be as simple as properly staffing our pursuit efforts. On these numbers, increased the total number of revenue by $1.67 million. Numbers work in reverse too. Shortchanging our efforts or not doing things the right way by, for example, doing all those bad habits in that exercise. If those bad habits are reducing your win rate by 1%, then on these numbers, you could be losing $1.67 million because of those bad habits. So when you're questioning whether something is worth doing, think about whether it'll have a 1% impact on what your numbers are. Because that can help motivate you. Other things that can have an impact are tools and reuse libraries. Reuse, proposal reuse. It does save money. But would a 1% decrease that on these numbers might cost you $1.67 billion, would using proposal reuse material save you that much money? I kind of doubt it. Is it realistic to say that proposal reuse material would have a 1% impact on your win rate? Yes, but it varies company to company. Depends on whether you sell a commodity or not. If you sell a commodity, it might be safe. If you do complex sales, it would be very easy for using win rate to impact the win or loss of one proposal out of 100. Management and culture aren't very tangible normally, but when you start correlating with your win rate, they become quantifiable. And by management and culture, I could be talking about things like, oh, if every proposal ends with a train wreck, a last-minute rush to the deadline, start tracking that. Okay, start tracking the ones that were last-minute rushes, correlate it with your win rate. Did those have a higher or lower win rate than the ones that didn't have a last-minute rush? And when you correlate it with your win rate, you can then calculate the cost of that, the cost impact of doing things that way. This is how you gain the motivation to change something like the culture in your organization.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
When, is there ever a time that you say, we're cutting this off because it's getting too close, we don't have enough time, just trash the whole thing, even though we've got X amount of dollars invested? Is there any kind of guess when we should do that?
Let's start with the fallacy of sunk costs. And this is actually something that's been like researched. The way people bet doesn't really conform to the odds. So if somebody has already bet, a chunk of money and lost it, they're actually more likely to continue to bet to recover the money that they lost, even though statistically the odds of them winning hasn't changed. Right. Right. And so that way of thinking, which the research seems to show is part of human nature, applies to proposals as well. So, just because you've already spent gobs of money on this pursuit does not change one bit the odds of winning it. So, if you get to the tail end of a proposal and it is a loser, just because you've spent gobs of money on it does not mean you should spend gobs of money more because it's a loser. Okay, but now we can argue about whether it's actually a loser or not. And I would approach that with a number of quality criteria and process and a whole lot of detail. The key thing to know here is that sunk costs do not change the statistical realities. That doesn't tell you when to make your decision or how to calculate your statistical probability of winning. That's always a bit of a guess. There are also other factors that go into whether you should bid a pursuit or whether you should continue with a pursuit that's in trouble, having to do with things like strategic value, as in, I'm trying to make the change from being 100% DoD and trying to get into the civilian market. I'm targeting this agency and I'm expecting, I need 7 leads and over the next 2 years, I've got 12 opportunities at that customer. I might submit a proposal to them that I know is going to lose, just so that I can get in front of them, just so that I can learn about them, just so that I can get a debrief from them, because I do not expect to win everything I submit. I expect to have to chase a fairly large number of pursuits in order to get to that win. So if it is a strategic account, it might be worth it to submit a proposal that I know is going to lose. That rationale and that reasoning is overused in most companies. Okay? You can look, if you look at every loser bid that a company submits where everybody knows that thing's going to lose, you can always find somebody who will step up and say, but it's got strategic value. Every time. But sometimes it actually does. Where I usually find solace is in these numbers. If I'm hitting my numbers, I expect to bid some that are going to lose for good reasons and bad reasons. And so long as I'm hitting my numbers and the number of losses are within the right range, okay, I can tolerate it. But if the number of wins is lower than my current, my win rate target would, tell me I need, then submitting those losers is bringing my win rate down. And in fact, one of the things you can do to increase your win rate is to improve your bid no bid process and bid fewer losers.
So this might answer this, you might have just answered this question. What type of process can be put in place when you find that all of your business projects are rushed and feel like last minute?
If you can calculate that this amount of effort should be put into each phase in order to hit your numbers and your win rate, then that could become a bid no bid criteria. As in, I know that every bid needs this amount of attention to deliver this win rate to hit these numbers. And when that's the case, if you are not giving a bid sufficient attention, then I know that its win rate will be low. And I know that that's lowering the probability of win. It's not worth pursuing. So one of the things that I've coached CEOs to do once they put in place a spreadsheet like this is to really challenge their business units, because if they're not willing to put this amount of effort into their pursuits, they're not going to hit their numbers. So I reverse things on them. Instead of fighting about things happening at the last minute, I want to fight about whether they've done their homework long before we even get there. Any follow-ups on that one?
Nope, that was it.
Okay.
Yes. So, would it also be fair, I'll turn that around and say, if I've already dumped 50,000 into this budget, this proposal, and it's still a turd, it's time to cut bait. If that's the average that I'm supposed to, that's the average that it takes to get a good proposal. When you've already dumped 350 hours into it, and it's still not anywhere near where it needs to go. I mean, I understand the danger of that.
It's the same sunk cost problem. If you have a pursuit where you've blown past these numbers with, the end still not being in sight, then even if you win it, you've spent so much on it that if you charged that project for the added cost of its pursuit, it probably wouldn't be profitable.
Just one quick, not related to the previous. So, when I'm trying to calculate the amount that the proposal is going to cost me, it's not cumulative of those four numbers, 6,300, 9,000, 11,000, 50,000. It's just the 50.
The proposal is based on submissions, not wins. Okay.
Right.
The pre-RFP pursuit is cumulative. Spend a certain amount in each phase.
Yep. Right. But the end one's not. Got it. Yep.
All right. let me quickly read through some of these questions, and hopefully you'll see how that pipeline analysis now connects to issues like these. I mentioned whether you should hire senior staff or junior staff, whether you should use the staff you already have, whether you should provide training, okay? So doing this pipeline analysis can help you answer those questions in a data-driven way. One of the ways that you can increase your win rate is process. So how much process should you have and how much effort should you put into formalizing it? Once again, the impact, correlate it with your win rate, look at your pipeline numbers, and you can get a data-driven answer to that. Which part of your process should you focus on? Which best practices really aren't? Seriously. Best practices are usually have a particular market or way of doing things in mind. And if you're in a different market, they're not applicable to you. But you might not realize that. Correlate everything with your win rate and then study the data to find out what works. As far as tools and reuse libraries go, should you buy proposal software? Well, the answer to that is, will it raise your win rate or lower your win rate, and how will that impact your numbers? Management and culture ends up being just as important to your win rate as your process is. Very important thing to know, all right? Because the proposal department obsesses on the proposal process. I obsess on the proposal process. But your culture has just as much an impact on your win rate as your proposal process does. So, make sure your culture emphasizes making data-driven decisions. All of the fight should be about the data and how to interpret it. Less fighting about whose opinion is better. Sometimes having the right arguments is what determines your success. If you're arguing about the wrong things, you're not only, you're wasting time and having a whole lot of negativity that has no productive value. Instead, argue over the right things. Okay. The mere tracking of ROI, having your leads in a spreadsheet with targets and tracking how things drop off during the qualification phases and how your win rate enables you to hit your numbers, just simply tracking it will result in a company doing less opportunistic bidding and doing more of the right things needed to win. Even if you don't get around to formalizing your process, you simply pay more attention to doing the right things. And it might not be formal, and for a small business, that might be okay. But because people are paying attention to trying to increase their win rate and trying to do the right thing, once they realize that this will hurt the numbers, you'll see less of it. So just simply tracking this stuff can have a major positive impact. All right, that's all I got. I think that's enough math for one day. Any questions? Likewise for anybody who's watching.
Do you have a lot of that stuff in either capture planning or prop library?
Prop library is where all the good stuff is.
Is it a subscription, or how does it work?
Prop Library has hundreds of free articles that you are welcome to browse and make use of. I generally make all the stuff that sort of discusses the theory and foundation available free. And then when I get into things like the specific checklist, the specific tools, the process and procedure details, that's the stuff that's subscriber only. But I've tried to set Prop Library up so that for small businesses, you can gain a full process that is just as detailed and capable as the ones at the biggest companies, but without investing nearly as much as the big companies do, so you can compete on an even playing ground. But then for the big companies always have gaps, and they have problems getting all their different business units on the same page regarding the process. So for them, Prop Library also makes sense, because it gives them a way to get everybody on the same page instead of, you know, all the different little territories that tend to evolve. No questions from the folks online? Okay.
Just if they wanted a break, I said, I think we're done.
Do you have any closing remarks for people?
I do have this survey that I need you to do, and if, I'm gonna send you the slides for today, so if, you want those and you didn't sign in this morning with your email, please put it on this piece of paper so that I can send it to you.
Is there a separate sign-in today?
Yes.
Oh, thanks. I'll do that.
And I will send you the link where you can get today's presentation that we saw, including those charts that he had. Those won't be in handouts, but they will be online copied so that you can go through this and look at it again. I know it would be phenomenal to be able to figure that out, but I'm really going to have to study that in order to be able to figure it out.
Yeah, I'm not a good Excel person.
I'm getting better, but Jerry.
Could we have the exercises we did this morning back?
Yes.
Or even just the blanks, I don't necessarily need them.
Blanks are here if you want them.
Okay.
But if you want yours, you can have, you know, whatever. I've got plenty of time.
Okay, cool.
So on that blank piece of paper, I can write yesterday's slides, today's slides, and my.
You should already have yesterday's slides.
Yeah, twice.
They came.
I fixed them and sent them out again so
Okay.
that you have, because Carl did these great fonts. I don't have. So it goes, it looks terrible. So I went through all 120 plus pages and redid the fonts on it so they all look right.
So use the second email
Use
and
the
just
second
ignore the
email then.
first.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
And I just did while you were in here listening. I was out there fixing today's, so I can send it to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
And will the video be available as well or not?
Yes, I will send you once Message Makers has that edited a little bit, because they're going to take out our long breaks and take those out, and I will let you know where they are. He said it's live already yesterday's, but it's just got the hour-long break, so then you can go to lunch or whatever. But the second one will not have the breaks, and you'd have to sit there and turn it on yourself. So let me grab these surveys.
Thank you, Message Maker.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming today. I really appreciate you taking the effort to stay here all day long, all 2 days.
So they had a couple more questions.
Oh, we have a couple more questions.
Is it better to call her?
Who, Carl? Is it better to call you or email you?
Email me.
I don't think you gave us your phone number.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
Probably.
say. There's an email there, there's no phone.
If you're in my room and you want my business card, I'll gladly give it to you.
And I highly
I live off
suggest
of email.
that you go to captureplanning.com. He has so much information on there that's free. He just gives it away.
All the good stuff's on the Prop Library.
Those exercises that we did, those were out of some of the courses you run through Capture Planning or Prop Library?
They're from the
Or-
online training that's on the Prop Library.
Okay, is that a free training? Is that a subscription thing?
It's free to the subscribers. So you get the subscription to Prop Library and you can take all of the online training that we have available.
Was that part of some of the, like, first couple courses?
That's actually from one of the dozen or so courses that are on there. It's from a proposal writing course. There's also exercises for doing things like the compliance matrix. So remember that slide with all the spaghetti stuff? Those slides came from the online training, but in the full course, you've got the exercise where you actually do the movements based on all those little arrows so that you can, kind of like with the proposal writing, some things, you know, when you're trying to develop a skill, you have to practice it. You can't just hear about it.
I noticed on some of those, because you copy and pasted, that it said to email it to you when you were done. So do you go through and like kind of grade them all? It's not something that's automated on some of the writing portions?
I don't grade them, but on Prop Library there's a transcript function. And if you send me your completed exercises, I can attach that exercise to your transcript so that not only can you show somebody everything that you've done in training, you can even have them drill down and see what you did on your exercises so that your transcript becomes proof of your capability as well as the fact that you took training. So that's why that's there.
So in your classes that you do online, do you go through that whole Excel spreadsheet so that you can develop it on your own and you explain more?
Yeah, I don't have a pipeline development course up yet. But the reason why there's hundreds of articles there is that I'm publishing new stuff every week. So I just haven't gotten down to the pipeline development course that's on my to-do list.